Good evening, everyone. My name is Mitch Cohen, and welcome to the Northborough Select Board meeting of August 28th, 2023. We'll call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. We are in person for I don't know, we've only done a couple of in-person meetings lately, so I don't have any introductory stuff to read about remote meetings. For folks at home, this is a special meeting primarily for the preliminary discussion of board goals. Member Julianne Hirsch suggested this, and we all agreed. So that's going to be the bulk of our meeting. We have one item first, which is to vote on the employment agreement with Michael Gallagher for interim town administrator services. Bob Reed's last day is this Thursday. As we've discussed at prior meetings, we're going to, we've hired, or now we will finally vote on hiring Mike Gallagher after interviewing a couple of people. And he is expected to be in the office for at least part of the day tomorrow. So I think everybody has seen the contract. Does anyone have any questions? Lisa, sure.
Just to double check under section 1 of the timing, it says the position of interim town administrator commencing on August 29th and ending upon the hiring of a permanent town administrator.
Yeah.
What would happen if 7 months down the road we're just hiring? Would he stay that 7th month?
Well, no.
Because he can only stay.
He can only stay for
months.
6.
Right.
Correct. So the charter doesn't need to be referred to here. The charter is the law of the land of the town of Northborough. So we don't have to call out provisions in the charter in a contract because they are implied to be enforced no matter what.
Okay.
The charter specifically says, as we've run into, that we can hire an interim town administrator for a 3-month period and then extend it for a second 3-month period. So in theory, in all likelihood, Mike will be here for more than 3 months, probably in the 4 to 5 month range, depending upon how things go.
Okay.
That's my expectation. Sure, good question. Anybody else have any questions? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to execute the employment agreement with Michael Gallagher for interim town administrator services.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made by Julianne, seconded by Kristen. Any further discussion? We don't even need to do a roll call vote. All those in favor say
Aye.
Aye. I hear that as unanimous in favor. And we have the actual contract with us tonight. I'm just going to sign.
Diana will be so happy with us. We'll sign it right now.
Oh, yes,
She won't have to harass us. Amen.
And it's also good for us to sign it tonight since he's starting tomorrow.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so that dispenses with that item, and now the only other item on our agenda is preliminary discussion of board goals. This is an open item for us to just discuss. This is for the board to work on goals for itself. This isn't setting goals for the town administrator, but things that we decide that are our goals. Obviously, many of them will become administrator goals in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if this board has ever discussed goals for itself, certainly not in the years that I've been observing or participating in this. I think it's a novel idea. Not that many towns set goals for themselves. But I think it's an interest. I think it's good that we're doing it. We do have an audience before us tonight of 3 fantastic representatives from the public. And I will say we'll be dealing with this rather informally. If anybody has any comments or questions during the meeting, raise your hand or politely say, "Hey, you," and I'll be happy to recognize you, and we'll go from there. We don't have any public comment agenda items, so we're not going to take comments on things unrelated to our goals. And that's about that. Julianne, do you want to give any further introduction?
Well, just to reiterate that this may be the first time that this board is setting goals, and actually a quick Google search shows that towns have done this in the past, and I think as we go through this, I hope the public becomes aware that we are listening to you. We're just trying to organize how to move forward with the ideas you bring to us and problems that you bring to us, and hopefully this will put us on a, on a schedule, a timeline that we'll try to get many things done, as many as possible, so.
Have you given any thought as to how we should proceed? Should we just go around in a line and each list one item, list everything that we've come to the meeting with?
So maybe we could start with, well, I'll start with the subjects that fell into certain categories for me. One was finance, and that would involve things like, maybe a little more education when we talk about tax rate. It would involve things like spending the ARPA money, and at what point, what's our timeline on that? Quarterly reports on tax payments, budgets, that sort of thing. I was impressed with Mr. Gallagher's statement that he does a collaborative budget formation, and I thought that would be an interesting thing to address. So finance is one. Communication is a big one for me, and that would involve things like, how does the board communicate with the staff through the TA back to the board? Is it are our communication methods efficient? And another example is, I'd like to meet new staff. I'd like to know when people are hired and meet them so that we can establish a partnership. So my third category is ongoing projects, and that would obviously be our White Cliffs, but also MPIC Complete Streets, and setting some goals for ourselves on that. And then my last category is things I want to learn more about, and hopefully the town would like to learn more about it too. Things like, how do we get electric car chargers, electronic voting at town meeting, that sort of thing. So if those four categories, if you think that the goals you've come up with tonight fall into any of them, then maybe we can just write them across the four boards, and or Lisa, you may have a whole different approach. But
Well, I like that. I actually did do some research, as I normally do, and I found, as Julianne said, that many towns have been doing this. It's kind of new for us. It's kind of a surprise. It was, well, I guess we don't have to invent the wheel, we just have to learn to use the wheel. So I made a draft of goals and objectives with the process, values and guiding principles, goals and objectives. And the goals and objectives of what we've just talked about in those categories would be what we would then put in to a document such as this. And I've made a draft for everybody, so I'll pass them down to you. And you can write on them, you can see if there's something that you like. I made a copy for Diane for the minutes. And some of what I think is kind of interesting is having realized that many towns do this, and they do it yearly. And every time you have new members of the board come into the group, they should be able to have almost like a manual, so to speak, of what's going on. What projects are in the queue, what projects are done, what projects are going to come, certain problems that have been age-old, how you read the charter, how you understand how to communicate, all that stuff would be really helpful to have so you understand it. I mean, Julianne and I went to the MMA and we did our, new selectmen seminar. And there's some very good things in this handbook that I wouldn't have known otherwise because I never had a handbook before. It's not like you can go out and take a class if you're going to run for office for these sort of things. You have to do your research. And in some cases, I think Mitch is probably our only member who was probably on this board before. So it helps for all of us to communicate well with each other when we have a better understanding of the path and how to do it. I know I'm a person, I don't like GPS. I'm old and I don't like GPS. Give me a roadmap. Let me look at it. Let me look at the whole thing so I can better understand the best way to take it, but not just do something that, well, you're told to do this or you're told to do that. So, I I love that we're doing this. It's a very important thing for everybody. It's important for us, it's important for the residents, it's important for everybody in the municipal world that we live in. I'm just gonna read the top process just to give you an idea of what this says, and then I'll let Kristen talk of her things. So, it says that, the Northborough Select Board annually affirms its values and guiding principles to align its goals and objectives for improving government as it interacts with the town administrator, committees, commissions, task force, citizens, and other units of government. Let's see, in so doing, the board aims to lead and establish strategic priorities, to provide support and guidance and encouragement where appropriate, and to be collaborative, open, and inclusive at all times. The values and guiding principles, we have governance, public health and safety, finance stability, infrastructure, quality of life, balance and equity, diversity, historic and cultural heritage, agricultural and natural resources, sustainability and resilience, economic resilience, and regional and sales interests. So there's just so much involved in what we're going to start doing tonight, and I hope that it continues and that we can put something together that we all feel proud of.
Thanks.
Okay.
Kristen?
I didn't bring handouts for everybody. But I like Julianne's categories. That makes sense to me too. And thank you, Lisa, for, because this gives us more ideas. I did write down more than just a few notes on a napkin. I did spend some time thinking about it begrudgingly, because it is a good idea, ultimately. I just, when faced with something as giant as what should the select board goals be for the whole town for, even for 1 year, it just was a little overwhelming. So I just started with a few things that popped into my head, and as Julianne was describing what the categories are, I feel like I can put my things into categories. And I know that I'll get more ideas from listening to other people's ideas. I'm one of those, like, leapfrog on top of somebody else's idea, and that'll give me another idea. But the idea of just, like, all by myself writing all the goals was, so I wrote a rough draft. I wrote, like, a half a page rough draft, and that's all I got. And that's actually not the roughest draft. The roughest draft is on the back of information about how to get a student visa application in the UK. So, anyway. So I don't really need to share anything specific till we get going. But anyway, that's how my process was working.
Thanks. So, yeah, I mean, I look at this as this is a first draft process for us. It will take a little while for us to finalize because we'll get them all on a piece of paper tonight, and maybe we'll even think of good ones later. That could happen too. Then we'll categorize. We'll be doing a good draft of categorization, it sounds like already. Then we'll prioritize and start to put some flesh on some of the things that are there. At some point in the next few months, we will have a permanent town administrator that will be on this ride with us. Right. And I think it's critical to get their input on these things. It is our decision to make, but getting input from staff is important so that we have an idea, primarily resources that are required to get certain things done, and prioritization, budget, any cost of doing these things we need to identify, and we can't do that very well totally on our own. So it's an iterative process. It'll be great, sometime in the next few months to get something like this affirmed, and then review annually. We will absolutely, for our permanent town administrator, set goals annually, as every select board should do with its administrator. Probably makes sense at the same time to go through and update our own goals. This is going to be, I have, 10, 15 items that I came prepared that I thought about. There are probably about 50 of them at this table, and there's no way that 50 goals is viable to put on, to say, all right, FY24, we're going to do 50 things. We're not going to be able to, but figure out what we're gonna do in what order will take a little time, but I think it's good that we're getting started.
And I think I do have 50 things on my list.
Okay.
I came in very
All right.
ambitiously. I love
Maybe 150 things on our list.
I love the categories that Julianne had suggested, and I thank Lisa as well for the really nice framework to build off of. There were a couple of other categories that came up for me that we can probably add in, but I was thinking infrastructure improvements. I was also thinking environmental stewardship and how that may be, you know, I know that you mentioned electric car chargers, but that I think could be a category unto itself. And then the real hot one for me is economic development. I would really like to see more there and more interaction between the community and the businesses. And then housing, you know, housing is a big one as well. But otherwise, I'm happy to categorize this, you know, as you'd like to see fit, and then we can take that from there.
So, piggybacking on what you said, so one of my bullet points was sustainability, because I think it should be our mission as a town to incorporate sustainability into every decision,
Yep.
large and small, that we make. And sometimes it's gonna be something small like, we're having an event, let's not provide plastic water bottles, let's encourage people to bring their own.
Yep.
Sometimes it's gonna be something really big, like can we get an electric vehicle for, you know, the police department, the fire department, whatever. And sometimes, you know, they may not work out, but we wanna, so I do feel like that needs to be incorporated into everything, so I'm not sure if it's its own category, or it should be like a special category, or we should just try to incorporate it into everything, I'm not, so we'll see how it plays out
I
when we
agree.
list things, right?
Yeah. I feel like this could go in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
And I think it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the important part tonight is to get as much as possible down on paper and not worry too much about the detailed categorization right now, because we can twist and turn that. And some of our ideas will fall into multiple categories, so we may end up with kind of like a three-dimensional matrix, or, you know, categories that include items that cross categories. So I would say if.
Get up and
you-
start writing?
You volunteered to be our handwriting?
I am here
Yes,
to
sir.
help.
Could we just step back? I feel the, Henry Scolani, 72 Crestwood Drive. I feel the board is getting into the details. The objective is to have a town that's affordable, secure, provide education for our children. Then you get into these details of the electric car chargers and the thing, but that's your overall objective. Then you get into your goals of how you're gonna get there,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
I like it.
I've done these before.
Thanks. Sure. Now, we have these Post-it note things, and we can, in theory, go to a second page, and these stick on a wall if we fill up a page, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Since you're up here, should we start with?
What would you like to start with?
I think a lot of us mentioned communication. Want to start with that?
Is that
Sure,
good?
sure.
This is not gonna be easy to read, I'm sorry.
As long as you can read it, that works for me.
Sounds good.
And as long as you're willing to retype it, if
Yeah.
you're the only one who can read it.
That sounds good.
Okay. Okay.
So for me, I would like to see improved communication, because I feel like, we have our meetings, things are voted on and voted on at town meeting, and we don't know the follow-up. We don't know why some projects are not completed as they were scheduled to be completed. So, and I'm kind of still thinking about what Henry said, that maybe we're jumping into the nitty-gritty too much, but maybe we can do the details and
Just
then.
keep in mind what each of these are supposed to be doing. You know, make it a better, a livable town, a secure town. You know, if you think that that's the type of things you're doing, that's fine. but just keep in mind the overall goal is a higher goal.
Uh-huh.
And then you work your details under it.
There's goals, objectives, and strategies in that order. You called the meeting tonight to get the public involved,
Uh-huh.
right? So, rather than start categorizing here right now, you ought to get some input and from the three of us that are here. And, at least have a say, you know, I've submitted an outline of several, action items and goals for you, actually more specific than goals maybe. I didn't try to categorize, I didn't try to prioritize or rank, but there are some items that are more important than others, and there are items that you could actually complete fairly quickly.
Yeah. If I could, Gib, maybe give the board a chance to run through a few things, and,
You want to.
yeah,
If you want to.
I think it would be helpful for
I've
the,
given copies to all of you.
okay.
So that'll help you.
Compile it.
Yeah.
Is it something you emailed to us a
What's
while?
that?
Is it something you emailed to us a while ago?
Don't you read your email?
I do, and then I sometimes forget them.
What do you mean you sometimes get them?
Sometimes forget them.
Oh.
I get them. So
I did send you one this morning.
I don't-
All of you.
I don't remember seeing one from you this morning. Did anyone else?
What's your name?
I have it.
Mitch?
Cole.
Okay, yeah,
Northborough.
yes.
Select Board.
Okay, I apologize. No, I
Doggone it, Mitch, let me know.
Yeah.
I sent it to your Northborough Select thing, all of you.
okay,
Yeah, I have it.
okay. And
I have a copy.
I apologize if I didn't
Did
see
you
it.
all get one? Kristen did, you did.
Let me
you
see.
did.
It's very
You-
possible.
I don't know if I saw that one, I'm sorry.
I don't.
I replied right away, didn't I? Like 3
Yeah.
minutes later.
Yep.
Yeah, I got it. I just happened to be on the email when it came
Okay,
through.
Mitch, I'm sorry that you didn't get it. Anyway, you should have it.
Well, this is one on there. It says enhance and improve communications.
Okay. Yeah, here we go.
All right, with residents through public meetings and
Here we
print and
go.
social media platforms. The lack of transparency has been an ongoing problem, especially with the former select board and town administrator. Strive to erase this problem, engage the residents as much as possible in decision-making process.
That's communications, that's
Right.
part of it.
So I think maybe the better thing is, why don't we start with communication?
Yeah, and we can bounce around and things like, and I just checked my email and I don't have anything from you. So if you could do me a favor and send it again.
Maybe you're not on the select board.
Someone check the town clerk, please.
So,
Okay, Mitch, I'll try to send it.
Yeah, thanks.
I can even give you a copy.
Okay, great, yeah.
is the overarching, goal here that we have a town that develops good communication between all parties, residents, staff?
That's good.
What do you think, Ann?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important.
Okay.
It's important.
Thanks.
And then under that, I'll offer a few ideas. Follow up on projects that were voted on at select board meetings or other meetings or town meeting. So just kind of, you can just write follow up on projects that were voted on. Introduce and meet new staff. And, I guess the best way to say this is to streamline communication between the board and the town administrator and staff. Right now, everything, according to our charter, is all communication has to go to the town administrator, then it goes to the staff gets back to the town administrator, then it might come back to me, and I have another question, and it just keeps going back and forth. And I was hoping that we could figure out a way to make that more efficient, and hopefully it will help everyone involved. And one more that I would write there is, in getting information out to the people in town, I would like to talk about and find out if we can use the Code Red a little more.
Like a townwide newsletter?
Well, Code Red, like,
code with that, but.
Sometimes people get
Yes, I'm sorry.
calls from, like, we get calls from Worcester, and
The school system uses something like that often, where you get a recorded voice of the school
Yeah.
superintendent that says something is going on, or school is canceled because of snow, or something like that. Some towns I mean, I think we do actually have something like that in
have it,
place.
yeah, we have it,
And
but
that part of it doesn't get used except in the case of emergencies.
Right.
Yeah,
That we haven't used it except.
right,
yeah.
right.
I know, I get communication all the time from, out west. I live in Northborough, I don't live in North Brookfield. And I keep hearing from the North Brookfield administrator.
You know, to go along with the communication, one of the things that I mentioned in my outline to you is that regarding the annual budget and the annual town meeting, it would be really beneficial for the public to have a chance to review the warrant, the articles, you know, ahead of time,
Mhm.
before the meeting. And at least give us a chance to get some input, review and input on them or ask questions. And the other thing with the annual meetings is, I think we used to have a cutoff time, you know, 10 or 11 o'clock, depending on when you're starting. But, you
Yeah.
know, to go beyond 4 hours, 4.5 hours is kind of stretching it. And I'd like to see that brought back. I don't know whatever happened to that, but it's a reasonable request, and I think it would serve
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah. The bylaws do say that town meeting has to end by a particular time, and the way it's written and the way I think our moderator does a good job following it is, once we hit that threshold, which I think is 10 o'clock PM, that the existing article that is ongoing at that moment continues until it's over, and then the meeting can decide whether they want to continue that night. In absence of town meeting deciding to continue that night, it is extended to the next night. It might be 11 o'clock as the deadline, I don't remember.
Well,
Yeah.
they go to 12
But
and
by doing
12:30
that,
Yeah.
and
by
stuff.
doing that, Mitch, some
Yeah.
people think they're not gonna get to something, so they go
Yeah.
home. And then the group that's left
Yeah.
votes, and I won't mention what project, but it was 1 o'clock in the morning when we
Yeah,
finally
I don't
voted.
wanna go too far off track, but I do have town meeting improvements on my list, and I guess communication is probably an aspect there.
I have one after
Yeah,
you write
So
that
it
down.
would be pre-meeting review and then a cutoff
yeah,
time.
so
And the other thing, sometimes, you know, when you're having a big, high-price, controversial article, it would be nice to have them up front rather than last.
I'm with you. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
I'm a fan of using special town meetings occasionally for some of those big ticket items that are gonna generate an hour and a half of debate, let people focus on that. Sometimes the timing works out that it's better to have it at the annual.
Like a warehouse over in Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
Did you read that?
I haven't read anything, I know there's a warehouse under construction there, yeah,
Well, they
two
got
of them,
another proposal
yeah,
that's controversial. That's,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah, I still,
Seeing you're from there,
I still hear things now and then.
it used to be a nice town.
Yeah. So, you mentioned two things, Gib, that are on my list regarding town meeting that I was gonna bring up anyway. I'll bring them up now here, and I apologize if this sidetracks us. Well, the idea is just get everything on the list. It doesn't really matter what order. One is, speaking of my old town, one of the things that we did there that I really liked is I would get together with the town moderator, it doesn't matter, two people to talk about town meeting in advance, and to do a little cable show. And that just go through the warrant in an informal way and say, oh, here's Article 4, this is what this does, and talk about it a little bit, then go on to Article 5. And it's a little show, and it was helpful to, particularly for newcomers to town meeting, to get an idea as to what actually is going on beforehand. And we would record it 2 or 3 weeks before town meeting and put it on cable, and, 10 people would watch it, I don't know. And you could still find them, believe it or not, if you go to, I'm not gonna tell you where to find it, but before I had a beard and looked a lot younger, you could find me talking about town meeting.
The moderator has authority to appoint some positions, correct?
Yes.
You guys get any, do you have an opportunity to get,
No, it's, the Appropriations Committee and a few other things are solely Town moderator.
Town moderator?
Yeah, and back to town meeting, talking about town meeting, I'm trying to keep us on focus as much as we can. To talk about different ways of maybe streamlining town meeting. Some towns so Northborough is very rare in that we don't have a regular fall town meeting. Almost all towns do. Some towns just do it for financial items that come up to just clean up the prior fiscal year after it's been closed and deal with a couple of things. Some towns will proactively plan for example, the fall town meeting or all the zoning related articles. So the planning board initiatives and bylaw changes and things like that would be generally scheduled for the fall, and all financial matters would be generally scheduled for the spring. A number of towns do that, and I think it's not a bad idea to at least talk about doing that. Pros and cons to it, in all ways, shapes, and forms, but I think it's an idea worth discussing. And that one advantage of that is then your annual town meeting gets a little shorter, because you are proactively saying, we're not going to deal with bylaw changes unless they are critical to deal with right then and there.
Well, I agree with that. I think that's a great idea, of having 2 meetings a year. It's special if you need something else.
Yeah.
But the 2 meetings make far more sense, because now you have 2 different opportunities to come. It's not going to go into the early part of the morning, and you have more time to look at things. So you have more time just to stick with finances, or more time to understand what the zoning changes or whatever is happening, because that zoning involves everything, planning, what we do down the road, and it kind of gets it goes on the second burner because finances are so important in the first town meeting or in the spring town meeting. So if you at least do both in different times, the focus can be as it belongs. And I'm wholeheartedly in favor of that.
Well, I think the fall, I think, is a better idea because you have 2 new select person that comes on board just after the town meeting.
Right.
And they have no clue what's going on, maybe. So if you had it in the fall, at least they have a couple of months to get adjusted.
Yeah. And it's another opportunity for members of the public to come to a town meeting and see what it's all about, and hopefully get really excited about the next one. Henry?
Somebody mentioned electronic voting.
Yeah.
I think that would streamline it. It also takes away the pressure of the person sitting beside you, how you vote, which I see a lot,
Yeah.
okay? And I bet it would chop an hour off of a town meeting because you're not going around counting and everything. It's
And
pretty
more accurate.
efficient, and it's more accurate, I
Yeah, I
think.
know more and more towns are doing that.
I don't know what it would cost, but I think it'd be well worth
ARPA money.
the amount that we would have to pay
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah,
Did you say electronic voting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
electronic voting, yeah.
town meeting, yeah.
I think we're all in agreement with that.
Yeah.
I have one more communication idea that's been on my mental list for a while. Some towns send out a town administrator's newsletter monthly. And I was reading one recently at a relative's house, and it was really interesting because I understand so much more about how towns work now that I've been doing this for a couple of years, but also it was written in a really user-friendly way. It was organized by category. It had a few pictures to share, and it was on paper, and it was mailed to people's houses. So that might be expensive. You could probably also opt to get a PDF in your inbox. But I feel like there are plenty of people who like the paper version of things too. So I don't know how much that would cost, but it did seem like a really nice idea.
Yeah, something like that was on my list too. One of the items that I had is we should appoint someone as a communications director. Does not need to be someone's full-time job. More and more towns are doing that, though. Westboro has a part-time, I don't know if they call it communications director, but a communications person that works in the administration office, and it's somebody that has another title or two also. And that's somebody to create a periodic newsletter to the town of important updates that everyone should be aware of in a user-friendly fashion. Someone to, keep an eye on social media. to not deal with every little thing that people say, but if there's something factual you can direct them to, someone says, hey, does anyone know where this is or what's going on with this project? Someone with an official title can say the official information on this project is at this link, and here's the link to the latest video of the latest meeting.
It's a very good idea, Mitch.
Yeah.
I mean, we got the White Cliffs, we have a fire station, you know, many people wanna know projects, and then you hear rumors and
Yep.
rumors. So if you got it officially,
Yeah,
you know, it would be, I think, much better.
yeah. It's not an easy job, and someone needs to have just that fine line of not getting in the middle of the controversy, but providing the dry, boring
Tell them
answers.
Where is such and such a project,
Yeah.
okay?
Yep. Yeah.
I'd like to see, I'm on the Earthworks board, and I'd like to see a flow chart, because we have no clue what's going on in the other boards.
Mm.
When a thing comes to
Yeah, and
us.
you're connected to a lot of other boards.
If we had a flow chart, I used to ask Fred, but he's not here anymore.
Mhm.
What's the conservative conservation doing, what's
Yeah.
this or that? But that probably not gonna happen again. So I think a flow chart would help us
Might-
know what's going on.
Might be good to, that, you could sort of have like a blog format on the town website, which I think, our town website is actually built on a pretty good structure. It might be able to do a lot more than it's doing now without a lot of extra work. So it's possible that there might be a page where everything could go from all of the land use boards. And as projects are updated, you just sort of see, rather than having to look at each individual project under each individual committee, maybe if there's a way that it could all flow up to one central page. I don't,
Pass,
I,
not pass, on hold, you know. if-
yeah, exactly, yeah, projects before.
Sometime last fall, I proposed that to Kerry and to Laurie Connors.
Okay.
A flow chart, that anybody could look, you know, this project is at this stage.
Yep.
This project is this stage. Even the boards, it's like you used to do with your mother and father. Ma says it's okay if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
Well, they'll
Yeah.
say, well, the planning board said it was okay. Let's go on. They didn't. They gave
Yep.
them stipulations of what they had to do before they'd say okay.
Right, I like that.
And back to that communication director position, I don't want to know if the library would want to take this on, but the library has taken on some communication role where they've got an employee now that has taken over running the Northborough Guide project. It is possible that the library could take on that communications role. They might need some extra staffing or some extra hours or something like that to make that happen. I think, in some ways, it makes more sense to be out of the central administration office, but the library is the most retail-oriented department of the town. And probably the best writers, absolutely.
So I think, to expand on what the gentlemen have said and what Mitch just said, one of the things I was going to suggest, I heard it at one of the trainings a while back, is that some towns once a year have a representative from every board, commission, and committee meet together, and they all, this is what conservation is doing, this is what Earthworks is doing, and a chance to hear, what they've accomplished, what they want to accomplish, and then to have, a discussion. How can we help each other? So that was one of my things to add to communication, and the other thing I want to write on that list is institute hybrid meetings.
Oh, definitely, on that. But I didn't know, what was the title for like the board collaborative meetings, like?
Yeah,
board
just put,
committee?
committee collaborative meetings, or once a year.
Committee meetings?
So the select board does not meet with any other,
We have liaisons, so I go to 5 or 6 committees, and in my report, I bring back and say, this is what they're doing. But, like, I always feel like cultural council could maybe piggyback off of things that community affairs does, or, the diversity and inclusion committee, and
is there no quarterly or sub-annually, department heads meeting with the select board?
No, that's a
No.
great idea.
They should, I don't know how the hell why you don't.
Well-
You got department heads, you guys are in charge of all of those, you should be meeting with them.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea for every department to come before the board once a year, sometimes more often, but probably once a year, and give us an update as to what they're doing and what's going on, or organize them into categories, related categories.
And so we have a relationship with
Mhm.
them to a certain extent.
Yes.
We're not in each other's faces all the time, but
Right.
they feel comfortable talking to us if they need us.
And I think, I mean, this isn't, again, this is not a reinvention of the wheel. I've seen minutes from 2005 where department heads were meeting with the Board of Selectmen, giving them what was going on, what the year's plans were and everything else. It's, I'm trying to find it so I can read some of it.
There used to be a lot
So,
more give and take, and, you know, I've got 50 years here, Henry's got a lot more than that, but, you know, the old select boards used to have a lot more interaction with department heads.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
And, even the public could go in and meet with them and ask questions, and they seem to be more, agreeable to that than they have been Hoyer over the last 30 years. I don't know what happened.
I think
A lot of change.
refining the relationship between the board and staff is
Yeah.
important. We haven't really talked about staff particularly there. I mean, one of the things, and I guess it's communication related, in a sense, is employee retention. That's something that I think the board should take more ownership of, and part of that is having a good and positive relationship with the staff that is still appropriate per the charter, you know.
Staff's gotta understand that, the difference between administration and management.
Mhm.
I would, oh, sorry. I think the other benefit of having, I was thinking more departmental, like, monthly reports or biannual report from the directors, and just to understand what their needs are, so I feel like we're not so caught off guard at town meeting when suddenly there's a big project that may come up unexpectedly, so just having a little bit more planning time and giving them the ability to really make sure that their needs
Mhm.
are heard.
So this was one of the parts of that, the minutes that I found. It said, Ms. Hubbard Ward provided a detailed review of the duties and responsibilities of the Treasurer Collector's Office. Due to the continued community growth and the multitude of programs and reporting requirements, she required that she would get another person for a part-time position, just to catch up perhaps with some of those things that had gotten past them. And I think that, I mean, that teamwork is what we've been talking about since we started all of this. And I think that's what we're trying to build, is this is all we're a team. We're supposed to be able to work together and for the benefit of the town of Northborough. So I think this is fabulous that we're all doing this, and that we will, you know, some of the things that I put on here is to work to improve citizen communication by creating and implementing a citizens correspondence policy. Create and continue monthly a regular publication of the town administrator's report. So that's all, again, we keep going around the same, yes, this is what we're all pretty much into.
Well, department heads have to recognize that they should be coming to you. I see department heads going to the town administrator a lot. I also see the, public, and maybe a select person going to a department head that then runs to the town administrator and complains about them coming to them.
Yeah, I mean, day to day, the responsibility, you know, the department heads report to the town administrator. But that doesn't mean there can't be a relationship between the department heads and the board. We need to find a way to make that work a little bit better than it is now.
Essential, we'll
Yeah,
have a relationship with
yes,
you guys.
yeah, it really is, it really is. And we don't oversee day to day the departments, we oversee day to day the administrator.
Right.
But for us to effectively do our job, we need to have a good understanding of what's going on at offices other than the administrator. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that I got,
Yeah.
you don't get to talk, you just get to write, that's terrible.
That's fine.
All right, so another thing I thought of is, provide guidance and resources for all town volunteers serving on boards, committees, and commissions to improve consistency and efficiency of public meetings and hearings. To start an annual training session for those boards, committee members on purpose and responsibility. So, you know, again, new members come on a board, they really aren't given a lot of information. They're not given any manuals, or this is what, in the case of the ZBA, this is what a variance is allowed. It's a three-part need, and you have to complete all three to get a variance. It's law.
Is there anything in your manual there about goals, about values and principles for the select board to be following?
Well,
Right.
there isn't necessarily, but that's what this draft that I handed out today was. It is to go through that and to get values and guiding principles and have the communication that we're doing tonight, and then creating those things for the town of Northborough.
But
So,
they're not in there.
they're not specifically in that manual, no.
Really?
But that doesn't mean that, and I mean, every town that I've checked already had it. So, it's just that I think we kind of, you know, we're different as a municipal.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, perhaps an earlier step than this could be to just create a vision statement and a few things, you know, 3 or 4 goals or initiatives that are under that vision statement. And then we're starting off a little bit more in the weeds, but this will help us understand what's going on, and if we want to then contract some of those things into a vision statement, we could do that once we see the details.
A question.
I want to let Laura speak up, and then
Thank
Henry.
you.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, when we're talking about employee retention and director reporting, I would love to review our org chart and just make sure it's efficient and it's
Yeah.
legal.
Yeah, and that's one. I mean, one of the things elsewhere on my list is a staffing study, essentially. How that gets categorized, I'm not sure. Probably finance under those initiatives, but just because we have a pretty flat org structure right now, and there are a lot of people that report to the town administrator, and if there are ways we can, whether it be consolidate departments or rethink that a little bit, so that the town administrator doesn't have so many direct reports, I think would help everybody. And that's part of what a staffing study will lead us to. Henry?
Do we have procedures for, like, when you became a selectman, did somebody say, you're gonna have to do this? You know when you're supposed to turn in certain reports, when you're supposed to do this? Is there anything in writing?
No.
Why
And
not?
there should be, so it's,
We've been in town for 250 years or plus.
Yeah.
Why don't we know what?
It's-
Well, I'm just saying.
yeah,
No, it's a
yeah.
good old boys club.
Yeah. But-
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've wondered this for a while. So if you get elected to the school committee,
Yeah.
you have, I think, a year to take courses under the state law. You have to take classes like within the next few months after you get elected. And I don't know what the ramifications are. Essentially, you can't actively participate in the school committee if you don't.
Run for an office, shouldn't you know what you're getting into?
You should.
before
You should. But there shouldn't be a requirement for running. It should be, so that's, I think, why it takes place afterwards. And some other boards have things that you either have to do or are expected to be done. And select boards, there isn't anything under state law, partially because the responsibilities vary. We have a particular charter that is, here's the form of government for the town of Northborough.
Now, what about the financial board? What about the
Yeah.
personnel board? Is there?
Because they fall under the charter, and our definition of what all of these boards do varies
And how can you
to
beat that?
Southborough, to Shrewsbury, to Westboro.
The only trouble is that you can watch every year that when you have a turnover or,
Mhm.
positions that are being,
Yeah.
run against, existing elected officials may point out, well, this person hasn't got experience, he's gotta get experience.
Mhm.
He doesn't have the training in it, we gotta, it takes years of training, yet there's nothing in writing to
Right.
guide him, there's nothing in training to provide him.
Yeah.
And we all come in cold and learn.
Yes.
I mean, you watch, you listen, you read,
Mhm.
and you come in and do the best you can and
Yep.
learn along the way.
Yeah.
There are courses in college that,
Yep.
pertain to.
Yeah, and the Mass Municipal Association, which is,
Right.
this book that a couple members brought with them,
But
is
they
good.
use this thing, you got a circular thing here
Yeah,
of saying, well, this person doesn't have experience enough, and then you're not providing any, there's not even an outline of goals.
yeah.
So, anyway.
Do we have a chart of when, for instance, the budgets have to be done, and this has to be done, and this has to be done? Now, I've heard through the years, I've heard our town administrator, we have to by this. Do we have a written, does the
So-
town have a written thing that we have to have the budgets in, we have to?
There are certain things required under state law in our charter that back up from town meeting. So town meeting is at the end of April. town meeting, the warrant for town meeting needs to be set either 14 or 30 days prior. I forget which our town falls into. Other than that, I don't think there's anything in the charter or the law. Typically, the town administrator will set rules for when department heads need to get their requested budget to the town. And we're gonna be into that season very, very soon.
Right.
So that's gonna be starting the next couple of months. Where this board, I think, could and should get involved is to start to expect more detailed budget status during that cycle. And most towns get that. That is one thing that, this past budget season was my first budget season sitting on this board, and it was very frustrating to me to not see budget as it went along, and new positions as that were under consideration by the administrator. Ultimately, we respond to the administrator's suggestions, and then we say yay or nay to those. But the board should be more involved in that process than we were this past year. And I think, for myself, my frustration hit its peak when the meeting that we had to vote on the budget, there was a major new position added at that request. And I think I let it be said that this will not be happening in the future, because that's not the way to do it. That should be, we should probably get the first draft budget in some level of detail, certainly no later than January 1st. I mean, the prior town administrator gave a financial report in the December timeframe every year, the financial trend monitoring report. I don't know whether that will continue in the future or not. That's up to whoever is sitting in the office next door. But that's not really a draft budget. That's 50,000-foot view.
When these draft budgets first come out,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't the select board as well as the finance be kind of looking at this together and deciding on whether this expenditure is warranted or justified, or if you ask for this certain amount of equipment here a year ago, why are you asking for the same
Mm-hmm.
amount of equipment and $1 million for more,
Yep.
Stuff this year? And why doesn't the finance board kind of ask the question, what is this costing the town taxpayer? How is this gonna impact the taxes?
So I'm not going to try to answer what the Appropriations Committee does or doesn't do. That's a question for them. They're a separate board appointed by the
I'd like to
moderator.
answer what the appropriations should do.
I think they play a critical role, and we play a different critical role. Ours is more policy,
But
but
it's
they
a mesh.
absolutely it's a mesh.
It's a mess.
Yes.
If you're saying no and they haven't reviewed it, or if
Mhm.
they have reviewed it and come up with a question on, well, I don't think this expenditure is legitimate, you shouldn't be overriding that and saying, well, we're gonna approve it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's
Yeah.
the way I think.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the budget that gets presented is the board's budget. And it has to be reviewed by the Appropriations Committee. We're the policy board.
After you have given a,
Yes, so in theory, we approve the budget that is presented to us at or around the public hearing that takes place a month or so before town meeting. And but we can, it is our budget. So we can say yay or nay on any line item if we want to get into the level of weeds.
finance and appropriations to kind of weigh in.
Absolutely. So they meet very frequently from late December, early January, right through April. Particularly appropriations, which is this year's budget. Financial planning is more the capital improvement committee is what most towns will
Yeah,
call
yeah.
that feature. Where I see this board being more involved with the budget, or having its focus regarding the budget, are new and changed initiatives. The town administrator says we should, add another police officer or DPW person or change a department or something like that. I think we should have a key role in that at the very beginning.
Can I just?
Sure.
Was it the facilities manager?
Yeah.
That he added that?
No, that was, this
You were
past year
surprised about-
was the deputy fire chief.
Okay.
And there was good justification for it, but it came to us at the meeting that we had to vote on the budget anyway. Not, I was, yeah, not the way it should be done.
And I do think that even at the finance committee, they were surprised.
Yes, they
Because
were.
I attended that.
Yeah,
But-
no, I watched the video of that one, yeah.
And I think what we're all agreeing to at this point is that we are more interested in knowing more and understanding more,
Yeah.
and not having just a presentation to say yes to.
Yeah.
We obviously want to be able to communicate, again, we're back into the communication, so that we're learning more, because we're being told more things, and then that we have a better understanding of the whole picture, right? Because that's really,
Yeah.
we're the whole picture.
Right, we're the
Right?
we're the big picture group.
And when it comes to appropriations and finance, that I'm like the people in the audience here today, I've attended many of those meetings, but there's just a couple of us that attend those. That people should be able to come and ask questions at those meetings, and they should be all like we do, making them public, so that if you want to go to that meeting and you want to ask a question, that you should be entitled to do that and have an answer. Because ultimately, you're the taxpayer. And they're overviewing what a budget might be, or what they're accepting from different department heads. And you have every right to ask questions, even at that point, not wait until town meeting.
In the outline that I provided you, one of the things, a priority, I'll give this one a priority. The things that really need attention and changing is our economic strategy and direction. And, in the time I've been here, more so in the last 30 years, we used to have a pretty frugal town board of selectmen and the town administrator here for, I think, up until probably the mid-90s or whatever, but what I've seen here over the last 20, 35 years is that we have been just putting out a budget, all expenditure, with no consideration or concern for the impact to the taxpayer. I've heard at meetings that if we don't have enough money, if we don't get enough money from the state, we'll raise taxes. That was a town administrator that said that. I've heard at meetings where planning and others have come in, where a guy, a developer is trying to put out plans for housing, and he wants to build 4 to 6 homes. He's got 3 or 4 different scenarios. I'll build 4 homes here and provide you, I'll give you land along the river here. Well, land's no good to the town, because just plain raw land's no good to the town. Unless it's developed, we can't get revenue on it. Well, I don't know if you've been in agriculture or natural resource management, or even if you're in a real estate brokerage, you know darn well that land that's set off and protected and can carry a pretty good value to a lot of people if they want to buy a home. We need to turn this all around. We're spending more in extracting more from the taxpayer than the money than we have money. We just can't keep doing it. Can't keep doing it. And you've got to look around at more of a steady state economics. We're not stopping growth. It's just going to be slow and more balanced. It's not a new concept. We've known this for a couple of 100 years or more, but we just don't follow it. It's like climate change. It's not there that we have to shovel out or dry out the basement. But anyway, that is one of the things that this town and all the towns are struggling with this. A lot of them are ahead of us, but we need to look at that and change it. And that reflects on the budget, on how we're gonna prepare a budget.
Yeah, I mean, just without going into too many details on that, one thing that Northborough has that is both a luxury and a curse is we have a significant amount of money above the levy limit, we are significantly below the levy limit and above the what we receive in taxes right now. So it is from a practical sense, it is easy to say, oh, you want another position, you want to add this, you want to make this more expensive, that's fine, we'll just raise it in taxes because we can. And not saying it's a good idea, but the balance, that balance is not forced upon us. Most towns in Massachusetts are at the levy limit, so they raise taxes 2.5% a year, because you can't do anything more unless you do an override, which is a whole big to-do.
Reorganize,
Yeah.
downsize, look at what you're spending the
Yeah.
money on. There's certainly, last year's budget, and you heard me get up at the meeting and complain about the DPW and the 3 new trucks, almost $1 million. And with plows and spreaders, that was, you go up there, I had the number, and I got asked afterwards, Gib, how do you know that? Well, I drove up and got out of my car and counted. They're all there to see.
Mhm.
And, if you get, $350,000 for one truck,
They're expensive, yeah.
$150,000 would really help the senior center.
Yeah.
Not asking for a hell of a lot.
Yep.
Mitch, I have a
yeah,
question about
sure.
that. So you know how you can hire like Collins or something to do
Sure.
a staffing study?
Yes.
Is there,
Well, we're contracting out plowing and road asphalt building and a lot of other things already.
but my question was gonna be a more general thing, like could you get some kind of expert in to look at how we spend money, and is it?
Probably.
Is it the most
There are
efficient?
consultants out there for everything.
Wait.
But then you're spending $150,000 on a consultant.
We're kind of overrun with consultants and committees.
I agree,
Yeah.
but I think that, it's like, why are financial planners helpful? Because they take a more objective look at your, at your financial situation. And, I mean, look, we're not talking about doing anything tonight, we're talking about ideas.
Right,
And maybe Jason Little could do that.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not suggesting this, but in theory, the board could do something like, direct the town administrator to give us a level funded budget. Something like that, that, not a level service budget, but a level funded budget, and they would then be forced to, develop the best budget they could without raising a dime in taxes. I don't think that is really a good idea, but that's an option before us. We could, and it's a lot of work. I've been, I've seen environments where that was absolutely required because there was no other option, because you were at the levy limit of 2.5, and you weren't getting any new state aid, and you saw what the dollar figure was, and that's gonna be your budget. And because then it becomes, okay, what positions do we cut? Sometimes there are some small savings that you can find by saying, oh, okay, this department is ordering, 100 reams of paper, and this department is ordering 100 reams of paper. Maybe if we put them together, I'm not saying those aren't done. Chances are those things are being done right now, because those are pretty easy to find. But sometimes you can go through and do that. One of the things, and I'm gonna sidetrack into finance for a second,
Yeah,
but
ask
it's,
that
but
question.
it's
We should
here.
start a financing,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
before we leave communication,
Okay.
does anybody feel that exit interviews when any of our staff leave could be beneficial?
I think so.
I think,
Especially in the early beginning, I mean,
yeah,
because we're starting from scratch, so to speak.
Yeah.
We're setting all these goals, we're setting out objectives.
yeah,
We have lost a lot of people.
yes.
Now,
Yeah,
there's a-
retention, as I said, I brought that up. So,
Okay.
it's an interesting question, because in an exit interview, you want and expect a lot of confidential feedback. Feedback that you might not get from an active employee. We are public, so we can't conduct that type of exit interview.
yeah.
But I would fully expect that the town administrator should conduct an exit interview with all or most people on their way out, no matter what the process is.
Right.
How do we get that? I'm not quite sure. My own opinion is I don't think we should participate in that directly, but maybe we could ask for some kind of a summary. We have access to personnel records, so if there's an exit interview, I would expect that to be written up and put in the person's personnel file. We have legal access to those personnel files. Maybe that's a way to do it. What's that?
Did they do that in Douglas?
I don't remember doing exit interviews there, no.
I really think that that should be one of our goals this year, is to do that, have that a direction that we want to have for so many reasons. You know, you may be able to put it into a staffing study information
Yep.
packet of
Yep.
why this is happening. Well, I mean, some of it, you know, is retirement, so a lot of this is retirement.
Yes,
And
correct,
it's
yeah.
just that time of it, you know, the cycle of people leaving to go on retirement or do something different with their lives.
Yep.
But it also would benefit us to be able to start having things in the queue. For example, like the police chief has already given us a lengthy, I'm leaving. And so
Give it a what?
he's retiring
Oh, yeah,
in
yeah.
December.
Yeah,
Well, that means that now we know we should conduct something to get somebody ready,
Yeah,
that he can then give whatever information he's going to, decide whether or not, you know, we keep it in-house or go out. Personally, I'm a hire within type of individual. I think that you've got somebody in place and you find out
Is
inside.
it appropriate for the chief to, give the board a name?
Recommend,
Is that
I
right?
would think recommendations would.
I think it would be appropriate for the board to ask for a recommendation. I don't know if it's appropriate for him to proactively give it, but we should
We
ask.
should ask.
And then he would give it.
And no, and prepare for those things, because you don't know, I mean, we're in a society now where somebody could get in a car accident, and there's only one person that's making decisions or know anything, and there it's gone. So that historic information has to be shared, I think. And knowing that we have this new turnover, it's time, you know, it's time that, I mean, we've already seen who the deputy fire chief is, right? I met him when we had,
Swearing
he was
in, yeah.
sworn in. And so that's already in the queue, if I'm not mistaken. So the deputy is supposed to come up to the fire chief when he retires.
That was the expectation with the creation of that position, and the hiring of that person.
All right,
You
so
know,
I didn't-
but ultimately, that's up to us to decide when that time occurs.
Okay, so again, that's a communication topic, that we are preparing now for the future, not just, oh my gosh, we have to do this, oh my gosh, we have to react to that.
Yep.
Making plans, I think, is really important for us to do.
Okay.
Okay, any more on
I-
communication?
I have a few more communication items, or I was gonna mention a finance item.
I would think we should stick with one and finish, so she can get the next board down.
Sure.
And wait a second, Laura, did you have anything else you wanted to put in on the
No.
communication?
No, that sounds good for communications. Been pretty thorough.
To me, this falls into communication, the roles and responsibilities of board liaisons. That we have these liaison positions, it's not written down anywhere what that is, and I get that question all the time. So I think it would be a good idea for us to just decide what it means.
All right.
I'm not gonna suggest anything now, but it's just one of those open
One
things.
suggestion.
Yes.
Liaison should attend the meetings.
As much as, but at the same time, if you're a liaison to 8 different boards,
I know.
that becomes
Sometimes, yeah.
impractical.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
It's not only that sometimes they're on the same night as a meeting that you have to
understand that
attend,
too, yeah.
but also, in my case, like, I can only take so many meetings.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a quality of life thing, like, I just can't do
Yeah.
all the
Yeah,
meetings
I
that.
don't know how many towns even have liaisons.
I-
It isn't
But
anything
that's
I've
how
run
we
across
communicate
before.
Between boards, though.
Yes,
At least that's, you know, we've been talking communication.
yeah, oh, yeah, that is,
Liaison is the only communication the selectmen have.
So you
Yeah.
guys.
yeah, that's why I
Well,
categorized
another-
as communication.
Another way the liaisons, I kind of do the backdoor liaison job when I can't make a meeting. I get in touch with the chair of that committee and I say, you know, give me an overview and let me know what you want me to put in my report. That's kind of the big.
Okay,
That's good.
That's all right.
And we're gonna, are we supposed to be able to decide on those positions at a certain time in the year, or?
It's under my responsibility to assign those out, and I'm really late with doing that this year. I really am.
He's gonna do it.
Yes,
Right, Mitch?
yes.
He's got it. He's
Yes.
on it.
there have been a couple of other things going on in the town. So moving right along.
So are we,
We're still
are we
communication.
moving on to a new?
I still have a couple of communication
Oh,
items.
gosh, okay, sorry.
Okay, that's all right. I have down as a communication before projects, and this is not something I think the board should give some overall direction on. I don't want to bring up any particular department, but, I mean, the DPW, for example, and I'm going to be very, very careful. I really like our DPW. They do a really, really good job. I think we've had a couple of instances where we got feedback from residents when, say, a street project was going on, that they didn't realize all of the details that were going on with it. And how could, coming up with a way, and if we have a communications person, they can help with that, to communicate out to the residents of a particular neighborhood that's, by the way, this is happening on this date, here's, we are going to have to inconvenience you, but you're gonna be happy with the end result, but here are some things to think about. And, if you're in a wheelchair, here are some things to keep in mind, or call us to let us know. And by the way, the curb is gonna change, or this, that, or the other thing. I think that some additional proactive communication, and again, I apologize for picking on the DPW, it's just the first thing that came into mind. I can think of it, any initiative from any project. If the senior center changes something, they should communicate that out to people, and anything and everybody else, but come up with some expectations for proactive communications would be good.
I like that.
Some of that has occurred,
Yeah.
Mitch, and the DPW evidently, or somebody, with regard to this controversial project down on Brigham with the cemetery.
The cemetery.
I went knocking on doors,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked if anyone had come to tell them, that this was gonna take place, and somebody had been knocking on the doors and
Okay,
telling the
good.
people, I don't know who.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
there's some of it that does
but
take place.
Somebody knocked on the doors, at least a couple of them, because I knocked on the doors myself.
Yeah, they do some of it, and,
Now, I don't think they knew the magnitude, but they knew something was gonna be happening,
yeah,
but,
yep. So that's that, and then the last item that I quickly categorized as communication, was mentioned briefly as meeting new staff. Just when somebody is hired in the town, at minimum, send us a memo. Certainly if it's a department head, I think we should have the opportunity to meet them at an upcoming meeting and just say hello, and it's just to establish that communication.
Yeah.
Or a recently created position. If in the budget season we create a new position, somebody gets hired for that, we should see them, and we should probably get an update a year later as to how it's going.
Right, I think so.
Okay, so that concludes the obvious communication item from my list.
Well, I might like to add to one of those,
Mhm.
and those are fabulous, by the way. When a project is being done by a third party, not by our own group,
Sure.
that third part, who oversees that third party? And the quality of work, and how it affected the neighborhood or whatever project they were up to. And having a report back of quality and all the things that you would do a review on third parties. Because third parties have to continue work here if we like what they did. If we didn't like what they did, how do you communicate that to the person making those decisions? That's important. That's a part of communication that I think is very important, because, again, it drops off. And then, say the resident that's having something done, a major thing done to their area, they realize that now so much stuff is not being done in-house, so to speak.
Mhm.
That we're having so much third party.
Yeah.
And how does that affect the budget? How does that affect the employee budget? We have X amount of employees. Are they doing work to complete that these things are helping them? Are they freeing them up to do other work that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do? I mean, that sort of thing, I think, and it doesn't matter what department it is, I think that everybody's asked for more people.
Yeah.
then what a department it is.
Yeah.
So they need to communicate to us that there might be a problem, or that here's the reason we need it. And maybe we can do something to, with the communication, be able to put somebody in for part-time, or just fill in a little gap, and then things can move slowly instead of just letting them all fall off.
You mean hire people instead of hiring contractors?
If depending on what their needs are. Because, and I have to admit that we spend a lot of money on experts. And we don't necessarily use their expert opinion once we've paid for it, for various reasons. Sometimes it's not what we wanted in the first place.
Sure.
Sometimes it didn't apply, and it was just a given that, okay, this person's gonna do this. So that communication has to come back too and say, that expert did not carry forth what we paid them to do. What do we do in the future? Do we let them know that, on the general, we're not happy with what happened, or that we love what happened? You know what I'm saying? It's not just write the check and say, okay,
Yeah.
thanks, we'll call you next week for the next time.
Yeah, I mean, typically the department heads have responsibility of the contractors that they hire, and the board does not get involved in the selection of those contractors.
But would they get involved if the work that was done was not done to, like a general, please, I'm pleased with the work? I mean, how do they find that out?
I mean, I'd say if the board has concerns about the quality of workmanship in a project, or how it was completed, or how it was designed, or any of those things, we could communicate that to that department.
Okay,
And-
how would we, I mean, would somebody come to us with that, or how would?
Well, if we notice or hear from the public that, XYZ project wasn't done to their satisfaction, then, the proper procedure is we send something, either individually or as a board, depending upon how we felt, to the administrator, and says, we have concerns about X, Y, and Z. And that's that. And then because it's hard as us from, in these cases, an outsider really, to know, gee, if you didn't like the color of the paint that was put on the wall, or, whatever the implementation detail was that a design decision that was made by an architect or by in-house, or was it left up to the contractor to decide that? There are a lot of permutations, and then the why. And sometimes it can be like, yeah, that this thing is not as good as the old thing, but to get the old thing back in there working well, it would have cost twice as much, and we would have had to do half as many of those things during the year, half as many feet of sidewalks, or whatever it is. There's always the debate, for example, of a, concrete sidewalk versus paved sidewalk.
Right.
And a concrete sidewalk looks nicer and lasts longer, but it's like 3 times the price.
Right.
So that's a never-ending debate.
Right, and I think that then gets into, again, goal and objectives.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want to look like? What do you want, are you willing to spend more money to have a better look?
Yeah.
Because you're doubling, I mean, you may not spend a lot the first time, but if you multiply,
Yeah.
redo,
Yeah.
where's the balance?
Yeah, yeah,
And,
it's, I agree, and those decisions, we can make those during the budget process. So, for example, if there is a request for, we want X $100,000 for additional Chapter 90 money to do more roads, we could ask, hey, are you doing this, are you doing that? In that, and we could make a decision of, for example, all right, use lower quality materials but do twice as many roads. Or we could make the decision that says use really high quality materials but don't get as much done.
Right.
Or we can make the decision of, use the quality that you're recommending, but we're going to put in another request town meeting, put in another $200,000 on top of that so we can do even more. And those are our decisions to make, ultimately town meeting's decisions to fund. Okay. All right. I have no other communication items. I have a lot more items, but
Which
that's
topic
it.
would you like next?
We started on finance. Do we want to start with finance?
Finance next?
Good.
Okay.
Do you want to start a new
It's not a new sheet,
page,
Laura.
Laura?
Yeah.
Do you want help putting them up on the wall, maybe?
My penmanship is horrible.
So you don't want to put them on the wall?
If you want to, you want.
I just thought if we could
Yeah, Ron,
If Scott bills a work,
yeah,
and he has a subcontractor,
sure,
does he make a report to the administrator, or does it doesn't come to you?
correct.
Who goes to his board? A monthly report?
I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know what monthly reports there are from the DPW to the administrator. We get monthly reports from police and fire to the board. Those are the only two that we get.
So he reports to the town administrator, I would assume.
Yeah. The DPW director reports to the town administrator, and all of their communications are there, and I expect that whatever the expectations were for periodic reports under the old administrator will probably be different under the new, because it's gonna be a different person.
And the administrator will come to you folks, and he gives a report on the town activity.
Yes. Yeah.
How often does he do that?
I mean, in theory, he's supposed to keep us just up to, he or she is supposed to keep us just up to date.
You're talking every month, every quarter? Well, what would you like?
Yeah, I mean,
I'd like every month, anyway.
yeah, I mean, that's
Every
up.
month, like
What,
monthly.
what we've had, for example, from our interim town administrator, typically every Friday, not necessarily every Friday, but most Fridays, he sends us a quick, it's just bullet, here are some things going on.
If
And
it doesn't pull the paint off, you'll have to get it repainted.
Oh, no. All right, so, who's paying for that?
We'll talk to 3M.
Yeah. But there are different ways of doing that. So, that's something that I definitely would like to see, and that will be something that once we hire a new town administrator, as part of that onboarding is what are the board's expectations at that level of detail. Yeah. Yeah. I would certainly like more communication than less, more than we had before.
So it'd be a weekly, monthly, whatever.
Yeah, it could be tied to each of our meetings, each regular meeting, we get a little summary in our agenda packet. A lot of boards operate that way. School committee operates that way, library trustees operates that way. That's when those updates typically come out. Okay. Finance, who wants to start?
So I think we have to do our overarching statement. And this is a living document, as people like to say. And maybe we could start with something like, the goal is to provide financial stability, maintain services and education while keeping the town affordable.
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that?
Can you say that again? I think you said it.
Oh, say it again? Oh. Okay.
Or just go back to the video later.
Provide financial stability, maintain services, quality education, while keeping the town affordable.
Financial stability.
Financial stability, maintain services,
Yep.
quality education, affordability. Okay, and then I have a few ideas under finance, and we did discuss already under communication, but I want to reiterate that I think that appropriations, finance, as those budgets are being made, there should be public comment available at those meetings, so that if people have questions and ideas, that's the time to do it, because as everyone has said, town meeting, that's not the time to say, why do you need
An extra backhoe.
Right, extra books or whatever. Okay, so here's some ideas under finance. Can we look into using, employing interns for certain things? Like you mentioned a communications director. I wonder if a college student might, I see where other towns have used interns, like for the health department and things like that. Might be an interesting thing to investigate.
I don't know if I'd want to use an intern for a communications person. Maybe you work under the communications person to do some of the copywriting. But I think it should be somebody with more practical municipal experience. But I like the idea, and I think we have used interns here and there.
The youth commission had an intern.
Oh, great, great.
Senior Center did too. I think Kendra had somebody this spring. She was going to Worcester State or someplace, yeah. She worked like 1 or 2 days a week.
I bet these people bring in great ideas and are helpful, and I think it's, okay. So one of my goals is to work with CMRPC and other towns to see if there is any more ability to share services or equipment or anything like that. Also, I have to admit, I would like to have a really comprehensive discussion about tax rate. That's going to be coming up in a couple of months, and I really want to understand more about the benefits of a split tax rate. And I would like to move ahead, well, we have to move ahead on spending the ARPA money, but also, how do we find out if there's any other federal money available to us with these, you know, like the infrastructure bill or something like that? Also, I think we mentioned this, quarterly reports on the budget, tax revenue, that sort of thing. And I think that's it for me for finance.
What was the last one? I'm sorry. The last one you said?
So something like a quarterly
Oh,
meeting where
quarterly.
we get updated on,
Okay.
on revenue, expenditures. It's actually in our selectmen handbook that that's what a lot
It
of.
is shocking that we don't have that. Truly shocking.
It's where it's always been done.
Doesn't mean it's always the way it will be.
So yes, so I'd like to, on some of the financial stability, have a review annually of what the town administrator's strategies for risk and legal budget management might be. Because we have ongoing things, or depending on what's coming into them, you know, it would probably be a good idea. I mean, at this point, we just don't even have we have a breakdown of what we spend legal fees. You know, what are they? What, you know, how much goes to one project? How much goes to a quick question? How often does the ZBA might ask, or the planning board might ask, or that sort of thing? I know that, you know, usually we have a stipend that we put in, you know, we pay them, retainer for the year, I suppose. Some legal fees are set up so that here's your retainer, and then you work off the retainer.
Yeah, work off hourly.
Some of them are for specific, you know, specialized. That might be something different. I have never seen us, and maybe because I haven't been aware, but I've not seen a specific spin-off of an expert attorney on this thing.
I think the town's in dire need of having a complete and thorough review of the operation and administration budgets and trying to reduce the cost. But who conducts these reviews and come up with this?
I'll follow up on what Lisa was talking about, which was legal counsel. I mean, legal counsel is us, with the exception of the school committee. They employ their own counsel and deal with all, you know, so anything we're talking about here has nothing to do with the school department. You know, we have authority over the naming of counsel, the naming of special counsels, so the town can name somebody as a special counsel for any particular purpose. Sometimes it's, some towns will have a separate counsel to deal with all land use issues. Some will, all right, here's a litigation issue, we'll name a special counsel.
You're subject to
for
an
that.
audit every year, aren't you, Mitch?
Oh, yeah, the town has to have an auditor every year.
So, and you get to see that.
Everybody, it's public, everyone gets to see it.
But when you're faced with, you know, the fiscal responsibility of, you know, not seeing just how much you can spend, but where you can reduce the costs and mitigate tax, you know, outlay here, and look at the operating budgets.
So I will twist that into one of the finance items that I had on my list. I'll use that as an opening, is as part of the staffing study, I expect that we'll find that right at the top of the list is to split the finance director and town accountant into two separate positions. That right now we have one person that does both, so that person pays every bill, every invoice that comes in, they're responsible for processing and paying and doing the number crunching, the data entry and everything like that. They're also responsible for the long-range forecasting, the budgeting, the looking for ways to be more efficient financially. And
Just that one person?
just that one person does both. That's Jason Little. And I really think that we would be well-served by splitting that into two. It does mean we're spending a little bit more money, but it means that we'll have somebody focused on the financial stability and the financial efficiency question. And that will be their job, not the day-to-day data entry of being a town accountant.
Could they not be hired as a part-time situation?
It really
Doesn't have
should
to be a full-time.
Both, we have enough work that both really need to be full-time. I mean, the finance director really needs to be full-time.
Yeah.
And there's enough work that the town
I mean, they
accountant
gotta look
should
at
do.
every damn department and
Yeah.
try to.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting bringing back the town administrator, the town accountant position that we merged 2 years ago,
So we,
or a different position?
so at some point, the finance director position was created and added to the responsibilities of the existing town accountant. What I'm suggesting is we split them off again, but keep them both. So the finance director
Okay.
position didn't exist prior to then.
And they both fall under our code.
They both fall on, so the finance director position does have a dotted line to us. Reports to the town administrator, but there is a dotted line to us,
Okay.
which is not true of most other department heads.
All right. Because we get- I mean, it's like
yeah.
police and fire.
Yeah,
So all three of those were always
it's,
part of us.
it's different in some ways that I don't remember the eccentricities there. But I think at the size of our budget, we should have a dedicated finance director. And that person's the department head of the finance department.
Okay.
So, as it is now, the town accountant reports to him because he's the same person, but the treasurer reports to him, the tax collector, and so forth.
All the
and
money people.
All the money people, the assessors, are all in that department.
And then who takes, I mean, part of that department,
Yeah.
this all goes to the finance, who takes care of, you know, in the past, there was quite a lot of land that we received over lack of tax payment.
Sure.
So, is there a new policy on that? Is it a general policy of saying, and do we create that policy by saying, okay, if there's X amount of money that's not being paid, and they've already been fined, you know, and this is going up and
Yeah.
up and up, that we should have a limit to how far it can go before we just go, that's enough, then we go to the next level.
So I thought you were gonna start to talk about town-owned land, and now you're, but, so so tax title taking is basically
Yes.
what you're asking about.
Yes, and again.
That's a good question. I mean, there are strict laws that allow towns to take land for unpaid taxes. They are very lengthy and very onerous and are very weighted in favor of the property owner, as in most cases they should be. That if you're senior citizens in a house and you're having trouble paying your taxes, the last thing anybody would want is the town to just quickly take the property.
That's correct.
That means in some cases, people that might not be the best citizens in the town and are just looking to get away with what they can get away with a lot. I think it's worth asking the question of, do we follow the same practice? And that's a question through the town administrator to the town treasurer. The town treasurer is responsible for all the tax title taking processes.
Right. I mean, and I'm talking about larger, I'm talking
Yeah.
about much larger.
Yeah.
Situations where it's, you know, in the past, because I've seen an awful lot of Ms. Ward's name on things, and when I go into the registry of deeds.
Sure.
So, it didn't seem like it took, that long to get that action happening, because when you read when it started and the amount and that sort of thing, it's pretty, some of them were pretty significantly small, but in shielding a
Yeah.
senior population, and shielding somebody that's got a financial, clearly a financial hardship, they get shielded. But the other groups are saying, because they're getting shielded, well, we should all get shielded. No, if in fact it's costing money, it's costing us money, it's revenue we're not receiving, there has to be a limit, like I said, a cutoff limit. So when you're into the $50,000,
Yeah,
that's like, what is it, a 5-year thing or a 10-year thing? It should be addressed as opposed to,
Yeah.
well, we just didn't have time to do that.
no, I mean, I think the treasurer should and probably does take a pretty aggressive stance on that because their job is to collect the taxes. I think it's worthwhile to ask, and to get a report on outstanding property taxes and properties and things like that. And that's,
Communications.
yeah, and that's something we can and should get without, I mean, that's probably public record.
Right.
Worcester just did that. They
Yeah.
took the woman's home.
Mm-hmm,
She hadn't paid, she got sick. in the
Okay.
Hospital.
yeah,
And they give it to a third party to go after the money. The town goes,
yeah,
it's not my fault.
yeah,
And they took her house.
yeah. There have been a lot of cases like, yeah, you have to be, obviously you wanna be careful about that.
Right.
That's not something we want.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Years ago in the annual report, there used to be a report of those people who owed back taxes.
oh jeez.
Oh, is that
There used to
right?
be.
Really?
Seriously, seriously, I'm going back into
I'm sure
the,
there's some businesses.
well, say, probably 60s, 70s.
Okay.
They used to.
Yeah.
But, see, some people might be debating the value of, that was valued.
Yeah.
They'd appeared as arrear in taxes.
Yeah,
But.
but they're still going through the abatement
Yeah, they're
process.
going through the.
Oh, they're
yeah,
appealing.
So you gotta be
Yeah.
careful with
Yeah,
that. too.
yeah, and in that situation, you're not allowed to take property.
Now, if the town does take property, we shouldn't hold on to it.
Correct, that's
We're
where,
not in the
yes,
real estate-
That was our
Yeah, we're
next-
not in the real estate business.
Right.
Per se.
Yeah.
It's fine for open space, but if you got a tax-paying property
Yeah.
that's not paying and you take it, sell it so you can
Yes.
start getting taxes from it
yeah,
again.
Right.
it surprises me.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't we
Mo-
just do that?
Right.
Didn't we just do that? Don't we have a property now that we took?
The town has a lot of property, and towns have reasons to hold on to certain parcels, but we should, every 3 years, something like that, just have an auction of outstanding property that the town doesn't have any use for. Many towns do that. That's just a normal course of business. So it surprises me that I haven't seen that in the few years I've been involved. Just because there's a piece of property, so that even if it's a small parcel and, no one's ever gonna build a house or build a business on there, try to get rid of it.
Right.
So that we don't have the liability for it. Maybe we'll get a little bit of tax revenue from it. Maybe somebody will do something productive with it. Sometimes it's a sliver of land next to somebody's house, and that homeowner is gonna buy it for $1,000. Great, off the books.
Right, right.
One of those.
On that
Okay.
note, Mitch, I hope the board sees fit to act pretty quickly on the old fire station on Church Street and try to facilitate a prospective buyer who's been
We
sitting
have-
around for the last 4 or 5 years, waiting for that.
we have-
While-
we have an
while
open-
While we complain about the unbeautification of downtown and no parking and all of that stuff, help her go ahead with this thing. and get it
We have an open RFP on it right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Davis Crow.
Laura, can you write tax title taking?
Sure.
I'm actually gonna use these for the minutes.
Can I
There's a
do
lot of
a
people in
finance
town
thing?
that own their houses outright that are in the low-income, middle-income seniors, and retires that, are having tax problems. And even though you've paid off the mortgage on your house, you're running into a situation where property taxes are cutting into 2 or 3 months of your savings and
Mhm.
retirement, and it hurts.
Well, that-
Even some of your town employees have mentioned, not publicly, but in the talks, that it's getting hard to stay in town.
Right. Well, then, and we have already started a little bit of the senior, what was it, a hold?
A senior work
You
off.
cannot pay your taxes.
The senior tax deferral.
Right.
So we approved the expansion of that at the last annual town meeting. And I hope some people will be able to take advantage of
It
that.
won't solve the problem.
It won't, unfortunately,
deferred
Yeah.
taxes and work programs don't.
Yeah, the deferral taxes, if, for those in that really low income bracket, in which we expanded to be less low income, it's still very low income.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous help, because it's a permanent deferral, essentially. You can defer the taxes for the rest of your life if you are a senior citizen and so forth, and don't make too much money. But there are a lot of people that are still struggling that doesn't qualify for. We're at the maximum, and I hope every couple of years we just re-up to whatever the maximum happens to be. You know, unfortunately, Massachusetts doesn't provide many options for ways of doing
They've
things.
got the problem to deal with, too, yeah.
I mean, we are limited in terms of the tax deferrals and the tax discounts, if you will, or anything like that, to whatever Massachusetts says we can do. We can't create our own structure. So,
You can,
like, we couldn't give a lower rate to a senior citizen, even if we thought we wanted
no,
to.
but I think in the case of seniors, I've seen other towns within, Worcester County and in Massachusetts, for senior citizens, cut the property taxes by quite a few percentages.
If, I don't,
That didn't take state approval.
yeah, I don't know of that being an option. If you can find it,
It's an option if we decide to make
yeah,
it.
if you, do me a favor, please find a town that does it.
No, they do it, and even
Yeah.
in Maine,
Yeah.
they're starting to look at that.
A lot of other states do have that available. My in-laws lived in New York. They had that. They were exempt from paying education
I mean,
taxes.
for people that are on social security, and I'll tell you, when I was with the Lions Club and
Yeah.
had to go around, this goes back to 90 or so when I was, King Lion and secretary for the Lions Club, but we were picking up people, seniors, to go to the Thanksgiving thing. Let me tell you, I ran into some houses where some of the old timers were really having a hard time
Yeah,
with their
again,
expenses.
I'll ask if you can find a town in Massachusetts that does what you describe. Get the details on that and send it to me, because I can look into, which is how the senior tax exemption came
I'll
out.
find you the details, Mitch.
Yeah.
If
Good.
not, we can discuss it with our state legislators.
Yeah,
Well, you ought to bring Robin and, whatchamacallit, from
Kate-
Westboro, what's her
Kate
name? She's
Donahue
starting
and-
there.
Yeah.
Bring them in, and,
Okay,
I'm sure they'll be receptive. to
Yeah.
that. Even,
yeah. My gut feeling is what you're describing would need to be approved by the legislature, but prove me wrong, please.
by the state,
Yeah, if you can find a town that's done it another way, please.
Blackstone did it for my mother and father and some others, and this goes back, for God's sakes, into the 60s and 70s.
Well, if you can find a town that does it now, let me know.
Douglas did it.
Douglas had nothing.
They had a guy leave Douglas for another town, and they reduced that taxes right down.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I got it.
Ha, ha, ha. Very good. I'm focused on Northborough. Don't remind me of my old town. All right.
I was kidding you.
A number of minutes ago, I think
Yes.
you said you had something
I have
for finance.
I have an ARPA goal thing, if that's okay with everyone, like a finance goal thing. Well, ARPA is under finance, that's what Julianne said at
Well,
the beginning.
mine was very general,
Yes.
know.
So I just wanna get it on the board.
Okay.
So, I wanted to, as a goal, I think one of our goals should be to, discuss what our priorities are for the ARPA money and what ships have sailed, what we're not gonna spend it on, if that's appropriate to talk about. Or are we going to make a list of all the options, like all the ARPA things, right? My little, addition to that would be that it's fun to think about what's one thing that we as a board could invest in for the town that the town wouldn't be investing in otherwise. Because something that will sort of increase the value of the town.
Right, so everybody's invested, like, and for instance, I would recommend that we in the downtown area, that we get a price for underground wiring and new lights and new, the type that are very attractive, that you can put the banner on and you can put the plants on. A lot of towns are doing it. It doesn't have to be the entire street, it's a certain section.
The little downtown.
And that benefits everyone.
No, it's really true.
It's
that-
not just,
Oh, underground utilities would be great.
yeah,
Agreed.
and I think,
Yeah,
I
but
think,
also just getting rid of the wires and making it look nice. That's a nice idea. Yeah, things like that.
so, and then.
Did you have a specific idea, Kristen?
No, I had the idea that we should come up with ideas.
And I piggybacked on that idea.
There you go.
There you go.
That's
That's a
what I
great
was
idea.
talking about.
But I do think, I'd like to get a price on that. I know Holden has done it. I know
Yeah,
Chelmsford
Holden
has
did
done
it when I lived in Holden.
Oh, is that right?
Which was in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
They did it a
Along
long
Route
time
20
ago.
there, would that be a state responsibility?
Yes.
Well,
We
we'd
would have to work with
we
the
would have
state.
to work with the state, but.
But I think in Holden, it's a state road too. I think it's 122.
Yeah, I would love to find out, what the particulars, but what in my estimation, that the easier way to do that as well, is that we've heard that the street is, the street's terrible to rip up the street, but why can't you take up the sidewalk and run it along underneath the
You
sidewalk
can
and then
do,
put it
it's
back?
totally doable. It's just a pain. It is a pain,
Yeah.
and people will grumble, and there's traffic, and there's bumps, and it's a pain, but when it's done, it's worth it.
I
Yep.
like it,
Can I bring
I know
Kevin
we
to
have
it?
development down there, everything's underground.
right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
nice
A lot
not
of
to have the
places.
poles and everything.
I think it
This
would
is down
make
in
a
Juniper
huge,
off of Brigham.
huge
That's
difference.
different.
Yeah, yeah, our downtown should really be
You know,
underground
it's
utilities.
I thought that there were some really good recommendations from the auditor report on things that we can add, possibly to work with Jason Little on from a process perspective, so I was hoping to add that. I know that the senior center had mentioned doing meals 5 days a week, so I don't know what the cost impact of adding that in would be.
At the
Put
cafe,
them
you
on the-
mean?
put them on the list.
But I know that a lot of the seniors have mentioned that that's their
you want me to
nutrition.
write this
No,
down
no,
so
no,
you
I'm
can
good,
talk?
I'll put it in, but I'm just explaining why I'm sharing that.
I got some of it written down here, I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
Oh, you gotta read your email.
I honestly, I'm so sorry, I
I know.
don't know how I
All
missed
right.
it.
All right.
It went to junk mail.
No, I always
Just a filter.
reply.
No, she always is.
This is a Gib filter.
I don't know how I missed
I
it,
got it here.
so, thank you.
So when do we have to spend, when do we have to commit the ARPA money?
So end of calendar year 2024, everything has to be committed, and by the end of 2026, it needs to be spent. And
Do we know
anything,
what's been committed already? The
Yeah.
design? Do it?
yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but we have
Okay.
records on that.
We gave about 1.3 left.
No, I think more.
More than that.
You think we got more than that?
Yeah.
It should be
1.7?
It should be 2 something.
Oh, I don't think it's 2 anymore.
Yeah, we spent a good chunk of money on the school roof.
Yeah, I
Right.
think
That
it's
was the
like
biggest-
1.8 left or something.
Okay.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, something like
And then
that.
you've also spent it on some other projects, 50 here and 70 here
Yeah.
and so forth.
Yeah.
So
So we
it
can-
sneaks up on you when you spend a little bit here and a little bit there.
Right.
Yeah,
It really sneaks up on you.
So that should be something too, that we put a time limit on that, to be able to
Mhm.
get that information and make
yeah,
that decision.
yeah, I mean, a big thing that we were waiting for, relates to downtown redevelopment.
Right.
And Lori Connors has requested to come to our meeting, first
Right.
meeting in September.
Right.
Or at least one of the 2 meetings in September, because there's a lot piling up, to talk and make a request for some of those things. So there are a few things coming in from that downtown redevelopment
All right.
project.
At the same time, we better get a report from the finance director about what exactly left.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that would be part of it.
Okay.
And that's easy to figure out, because
Yeah.
when we made our last decisions about ARPA in the spring, when we approved the school project, there was a memo in there of what we had spent so far and what was left, so we can easily deduct from that.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
I'm just adding this one in that we spoke about at the beginning, the collaborative budgets with town staff, for annual town meeting. Were there any other finance goals?
When can I get a raise?
And double your salary.
I actually think we should get paid a little, and we don't get paid that much, but I think we should get paid less.
Looking at the salary sheet.
I'll take yours, Mitch.
Do I get anything different? I don't even know.
No,
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
All right.
That's why you could double it, because you don't get paid.
All right, all right, so I've got,
Oh, should we say, would economic fall under finance, economic development?
that's what I
Is
was
that what you're
gonna
gonna
say.
say?
You stole it from
I'm
me.
sorry.
No, it's
I was-
right there.
nope.
Yeah. So it is honestly a great shock and unconscionable to me that the town of
Yeah.
Northborough does not have an economic development commission. That is probably the biggest surprise when I moved here and started to review the government structure, that we don't have anything for that. It's not that there hasn't been economic development, but it has not been driven by the public, or by any dedicated staff member. A lot of towns will hire a development director,
There
for this
again,
purpose.
With an economic development plan or considerations, you want to start looking at your economic direction and strategy.
Yep.
as to where, you know,
That's a big part of that, yeah. And, we have, two simultaneous priorities. We have things that are on the outskirts of town that have one sets of needs, and we've got the downtown, which has a completely different set of needs and a completely different set of priorities. And really need to be looking at both. You could almost make an argument, you could have two economic development commissions, one for downtown, one for everywhere else. I don't think I want to go that far, and I think anybody would cut off my head if I said, let's create two new committees. One's enough. But it's shocking to me that we don't have one, and I see things happen in some neighboring towns that have them, some really creative uses. Westboro has done some great things with underutilized properties, where, an empty storefront, they will work with the owner of the property and somebody who wants to create a business and bring that business in for like a month or 3 months for super discounted rent and say, set up shop and see how your business works, try it out.
Right.
And if it works out, great, then set up a long-term lease.
At a bookstore this summer.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
yeah,
There's a bookstore in downtown Westboro right now that's doing exactly
yeah.
that.
That's it, right?
Yeah, I've seen some things like that. I think Hudson may have done some somewhat similar things. They have a very active economic development commission, as well as just a downtown organization of business owners that's there too, which is also, I think, something we should have of the downtown area. Is it set up an economic development commission, and I would give some consideration to hiring a staff person. There's pros and cons. I'm sure you're looking at me with an evil eye, saying, yeah, no, I know. But the goal, one of the goals of economic development is to bring in additional tax revenue. In my opinion, it's not the only goal, but it is a goal, and so hopefully that person would end up paying for themselves over the long term. Sometimes that person can also be out looking for grants.
Again, you go back to the master plan and back to what we had originally envisioned this town to be and wanted, and what the town was. Coming out of World War II, 1950, you had less than 5,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I moved in 72, you had 7,000 something. Now we're up over 15. That doesn't mean that the quality of living has matched the economic benefits that have come to the town residents or to the town itself. Matter of fact, they don't. There is a growth and development limit that you reach where development is no longer beneficial, quite frankly. And you get into this pattern now where with every house that's built and every warehouse and every building permit you put in this town, it's costing a lot more than the revenue you ever get back for it. It's costing a lot more in services and taxes and everything else than you can generate revenue for. So you gotta be careful. When we did the master plan, the people that took part in the master planning, public meetings, indicated to try to contain the major development to the malls that we already have down here on the other side of town, on the western side of town. The businesses that we were looking at were more of the, white collar type of individual businesses rather than the large corporations, manufacturing type stuff that is involved up over, often, by the high school. But anyway, that's what we were looking at, and when you look at downtown, that's really what we wanted to try to maintain in that downtown area, those type of small businesses. So,
I love this idea because I think we all have to admit that, for example, retail is a very changed environment now. And we're gonna need some really honest discussions about, you know, the nice little bookstore, is it
you're gonna have to
able
look
to
at
survive?
really hard at what you wanna approve to come in,
And what will survive?
and what will survive, cause a lot of them aren't gonna.
Yeah,
Yeah, just everything's changing
Yeah.
now, so, so I definitely think so. That, one of the things that we never seem to have, and I think might fall under the economic development, is creating opportunities for transportation, not enhancing, but transportation. We have nothing. I mean, we have the senior bus occasionally.
That was in the master plan
Right,
for
but we have-
increasing that.
We've got nothing to create, whether it's a business, a model, or anything that would create some sort of a bus through town for.
Yeah, extending on to probably the WRTA, or it could be the Metro West one, that goes to Marlboro. You know, yeah.
We need to look into that,
Mhm.
because I think
Yeah.
so much now, everybody has a car, but the people who don't,
Mhm.
or the seniors who, I mean, that bus isn't always available from,
Right.
I know I tried, even
Yeah.
during the voting season.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we don't
Well,
have a driver.
regular public transportation is obviously something we completely lack, and should really have, you know, a lot of the downtown proposals involve some high-density housing that would justify bus stops. And I'm not, you know, and I know that's a hot potato, but that is something that you get with that, is then you can go to because if we went to the state, or went to WRTA, and say, we'd like you to put a bus stop in downtown Northborough, they would look and say, nobody lives here. And why would they have a stop there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
here again, though, you know, you're in a catch-22. If you start, you know, advocating or promoting, you know, another 500 units of housing downtown, in order to justify public transportation, you also have to deal with the cost of that.
Yeah.
Which comes back around, and it really isn't,
And the schools
it
and
isn't gonna
everything.
solve the
Yeah,
tackle
it's,
problem or
they
anything.
all have pros and cons. So, you know, if, for example, the proposal that, you know, we will be forced to rezone some parts of town to be compatible with the MBTA adjacency law, unless the law changes.
The law changes, unless Holden.
What was that, Lisa?
Yeah, Holden has
Holden
refused
right
to
now
do it,
is
there's
a
a lawsuit
lawsuit.
right now.
So
Yeah.
their lawsuit, if they win their lawsuit, that's precedent.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And right now, you have to look at what is the burning need to bring that kind of density, you know, certainly to me, downtown is like, we don't have the infrastructure road-wise to do it.
So on the assumption that we are required, under current law, we are required to increase the zoning, and the biggest project that has been discussed is at the outskirts of town, near the Shrewsbury line, the baseball fields that are there. The property owner wants to do a project like that, and that may happen even without the MBTA law.
Well, out in the Pioneer Valley, you know, they do
Yeah.
have a bus line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that, yeah.
I do, and that's a
Yeah.
great, that's a great.
It's a great system.
program. I went to college out there,
No,
and I went to
they-
one of the smaller colleges,
If they can do
and
it,
it was a lifeline
it is.
for those small
Yeah.
towns.
It
It's
is.
really
I mean,
wonderful.
we had bus lines, when I came to Northborough, you could go from
Right, you had
Northborough to
travel.
Boston, and you could go to Worcester,
Yeah.
but the passengers weren't there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to drive.
Right.
That's still the problem, everybody wants to drive.
That was when gas was cheap and the cars were big.
No?
Yeah.
That's true.
But yeah, I think if we went to one of the agencies that's running a bus system now, we would have to not only ask, we would have to justify that there are riders for them. And that is, you know, if there are any large high-density developments in Northborough, that would provide some justification, no matter where it is.
The roads and the parking are
Yeah.
limitations.
Yeah, oh,
And so.
no question.
And so, you know, like the Cape, we're not gonna try to widen the damn roads. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a state road anyway, but you don't wanna do that, so you gotta try to be able to offset that with public transportation of some sort.
Yeah, yeah, I don't see the town of Northborough taking ownership of public transportation. I think we tie into one of the systems that we are adjacent to, and we are adjacent to, I think, 3 different systems. And one way or another, you know, finding a way to tie into them would be helpful.
Well, you know, if we do get a cute little downtown with all those lovely lights, we could get a little rickshaw company. We could take them at least out to Route 9, so they can go down 135 and just get onto 9 where the things are happening, but.
I do
Horse and
remember,
wagon.
I was reading about this a few years ago, or there was a town that rather than employing public transit, they had an agreement with Uber. And they were able to save a lot of money on public transit because they didn't want to bring in the big equipment, the additional service. So there may be more creative ways that we can look at that to help
idea.
solve
Just
our.
buy some self-driving cars.
Well, no, I was thinking like
Yeah,
the rideshare programs,
yes.
but self-driving cars are good
which is
too.
the way that Uber is going, is
Fair
they're
enough.
going that way.
The senior center had a grant back a couple of years ago where if you wanted to go to Boston for a medical thing, you could do it. Not that many people took advantage of it.
Yeah, which is why that might be a better option than investing in one of these bigger
And then we went to
services.
taxis. I think it was taxi out of Framingham we had a contract with. And once again, people just didn't use it.
Yeah, it's hard to, well, here you go, meet the public.
I'm glad you're here.
I do.
Yes, yes.
I don't know what it
So,
takes.
and I just have one more thing I'd actually like to put back on the communication side.
Yeah.
But it's the overreach of communication. There's a big problem, I think, with many citizens that the cell towers, as many as we have, doesn't seem to give us clear service. I mean, there's one at I live, you know, on the west side, east side of town.
Yeah.
We have, the police station has one. There's one now across at the White Cliffs telephone pole. It doesn't do any different than before it was up.
Yeah.
And I have people that are pixelated in my ear. It's very frustrating, and then,
Get your phone, get your iPhone onto your Wi-Fi in your house.
It is.
For the cell service,
Right.
which is a setting you can turn on, so that's like a.
that's one, but
Yeah,
I
that's
know
good.
that up on, you know, in the
Yeah.
Green Street area and
Yeah.
everything else, it's so wooded that there's just, you
Yeah.
can't hear, you can't conduct business, and more people are getting away from home phones
Mhm.
and wanting to utilize those cells, and
That's interesting, because that's all private industry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of any towns that operate their own cell towers.
does Shrewsbury though? Shrewsbury does some of their own
Shrewsbury does their own
communication.
communication. I don't think they do cellular service. They do their own cable, they do their own electricity
Yeah,
and telephone, but I don't think they do their own cell.
There's one there.
It's an
Verizon.
interesting idea.
since we have those towers over on Fort West.
Yeah.
We don't have enough to do. I think that's a great idea, Mitch.
I have a couple more finance
Okay,
things, sorry.
Ready? No problem.
Does anyone else have any finance things? All right, I've got a couple more that,
Can we, after finance, can we just take a little
Yes.
break?
yes, I think we should, I was gonna suggest we think about how to deal with next. So,
The 9.
kind of sort of related to finances, bylaw recodification.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You know, is that really finance? I don't know what category that goes into.
Yeah.
But that's something that we have talked about doing as a town, is having someone go through our bylaws and just, the purpose of recodification is to make sure they are still legal and make sure the reference to chapter 1, 2, 3 of the state law still actually points to the right place and everything else, so that you have a good starting point for future cleanup and future modifications, something we haven't done.
Use ARPA money for that?
No,
No?
no,
We can, sure.
no. We have a downtown project.
Yeah, I have a mixed.
Yeah.
have a
I
downtown
mean,
project.
the answer is legally, sure, we can, but that should be normally funded as part of the budget every 10 years or so. I mentioned earlier a staffing study.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't remember where I put that, or if that
Back in.
was already mentioned. And actually, somebody already, I think Julianne, everybody mentioned financial updates to the board, you know, whether it be quarterly or monthly or something like that.
monthly.
I think we should get, I mean.
Right now.
Pretty easy to run a report monthly.
Yep, and then,
yeah.
you know, in a couple of years, maybe it'll be
Yeah,
quarterly, but.
yeah, no, we should see some things more often.
And
All right, that's it for
can I
finance
ask
for
a
me.
question on the recodification? I know that in 2009, the entire zoning book was done over. Nobody really-
2009?
Yeah,
Yeah,
nobody
okay.
really looked at it. It was
Okay.
just brought to town meeting, here it is, read it.
Okay.
If you didn't read it, too bad, vote yes or no.
Okay,
Many things changed that nobody was aware of changed.
okay,
And we were told at that time, oh, if there's a problem, we can go back and adjust it. And yet every time we tried to adjust it, it was, oh, wow,
Yeah.
no.
yeah, because you've changed it already.
Right?
So that's what, yeah.
So I would like, I don't know if that can be part of that recodification, but
I mean,
there's,
recodification should give you the same start point and end point.
okay,
It shouldn't have practical changes in it, so what you're describing, I wasn't here then, but what you're describing to me isn't a recodification, even if it was stated as such.
okay, because
Yeah,
that'll be,
there were practical changes made.
okay, 'cause I think we went around some pretty bad ideas and,
Okay.
and now we're
Mhm.
feeling the pain of it, so
Yeah.
it won't be under, obviously, finance, but I think it's an important thing
Okay.
to establish. We gonna take a little walk?
All right, do we want to?
Get Riptic?
We have a
Can't just
technical
rip it,
problem.
Chris?
No, we don't have a technical problem, we were trying to be quiet so you guys could hear.
All right, do we want to take a 10-minute break?
It's informal.
So moved.
Okay, all right, 10-minute recess.
10-minute recess.
give us a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everybody. We've had a 10-minute recess to stretch and so forth. We have some additional categories and items left. I am seeing some tired faces and very tired faces in our audience because they went home to go to bed. So I'm going to make a suggestion that maybe we try to accelerate the rest of this a little bit and maybe more rapid fire get our remaining items onto a list so they are codified, if you will, and maybe a little less discussion about them now, knowing we will come back to talk about this further. And I mean, one thing that's worth mentioning to us and to the public is we've engaged the services of Jeff Nutting, who's a retired town administrator, to help us through goals and training and everything like that. You know, probably sometime in the latter September timeframe. We haven't scheduled that yet. And hopefully he'll watch this meeting as a way of educating him about us before we have that session. And that's one opportunity of many for us to talk about these things. I'm also perfectly happy having we will have subsequent meetings anyway, but if anyone feels that we haven't gotten through even the first night of this tonight, we can schedule another one.
I'm almost thinking I'd like to see a skeleton of what we've already done tonight, much like this, incorporate some of the draft idea into that, so that it's not as huge an item all at once.
Yeah.
I think if that, bringing all this in, putting it in an organized fashion
Yeah.
helps. Because I personally would like to see that when we do bring Mr. Nutting in, that it's more of that he's, after seeing, maybe if he's watched the meeting and what we've discussed, that looking for direction on how to accomplish those things next, as opposed to just,
Right.
The accomplishment is very important, because
Yeah.
we really don't want to.
Yeah. And Mike Gallagher, our interim town administrator, as of tomorrow, I'm sure will want to watch this to see some of the things that are going on for the few months that he'll be here, because we'll need his help in organizing this.
So did we want to do like this next one as a miscellaneous title, and then we can arrange by category
can
then?
categorize
And then
later.
we can just,
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that
So,
work?
yeah, I
Sure.
think we're,
Okay. Laura, do you want to go first with anything?
I'll go at the end.
Okay.
Thank you, Dawn.
Okay.
Could I start?
Absolutely.
I would love to get building projects on the list of priorities, goals.
Yeah.
To wherever, but we have, obviously, the white elephant is the White Cliffs, right? The big thing that looms over everything we do, it feels like. So White Cliffs, I have a few subheadings on that, but we can talk about those later. Just Town Hall.
Yep.
That's another big project.
Yep.
The fire station. And Peasley School.
Can I add to your list?
You can, because I'm all done.
The downtown revitalization, complete streets,
slow down. He's writing fast.
Yep.
and, well, this is kind of off the topic of ongoing projects, but we at some point have to review executive session minutes, but that's so off topic, forget that. So
Yeah.
just.
Diane has that prepared. We'll probably do that, I'm guessing, the second meeting of September.
Oh, great, okay, yes, so I think Kristen had most of it, and I just wanted to add those two.
So is our subcategory again gonna go down into?
We're not really doing categories now, I'm just putting
Right.
everything out that everybody's saying.
Well, do we rewrite our spending on that because of the downtown revitalization that's on that? Or is that something that's still back into the finance?
It's there. I mean, it's there in the big picture.
Okay.
So, as I said, many of these things will fall into multiple categories.
Okay, so, and then, on the we did say complete streets, right?
Yep.
Okay, so they're under the complete streets, and again, I wanna highlight crosswalks and sidewalks.
I did, so along those lines, I also said bike paths and bike lanes, which might fall into
Yes,
that.
yeah,
Mhm.
and then I'd like to add
Yeah.
waterways.
Oh, yes.
Are you
Cleaning
saying
them up.
crosswalks and what?
Waterways.
Waterways,
Can you clarify what you mean by waterways?
the Assabet, water that we have, like it goes underneath
Yeah.
the arched bridge.
Yep.
And then going up into some, further up the street.
Do you mean like?
Cleaning it up?
Cleaning it up.
Yes, cleaning the Assabet River.
Bartlett Pond,
Bartlett
for example.
Pond, And,
Bartlett Pond has some weeds, yeah, some weed problems.
Yep.
and I know we've put money aside for Bartlett Pond, but I don't know why Bartlett Pond is.
I know Conservation's been working on that.
So, so that's kind of important, because again, you could do some, now, for me, a little bit of economic development into the the waterways, is you could do something with kayaking, or, you know, some recreational use that we don't have, but we have this could be very nice. I know I actually kayaked on a little section of it. Kayaked, yeah. But we have a boat launch right there off Wyman Street. So, you know, it would really behoove us to work on that.
So as far as bike lanes and paths, we should add the
Trail.
yeah, what's that called?
Northborough Trails?
The
The one that brings Westboro and with
The
us
rail
to some,
trail.
rail trail, I guess it's called.
making us part of that multi-town rail trail that connects all across
I used to know
the
that
state.
acronym, I don't remember it now.
I forget what it's called too, yeah, but,
Borough something, or?
yeah,
We know what you're talking about.
yeah, and part of it would be on the aqueduct. And we wouldn't necessarily need to pave it or anything, it could just be,
I know we had talked about doing something on top of the aqueduct bridge too, to make that accessible again. Is that something we'd wanna add there, or is that not feasible now?
Well, no, I thought it was already
oh, the
Okay,
bridge.
Okay.
Yeah.
over
Yeah,
the
we're
bridge. I
doing
thought
the
this
bridge. I think
discussion
we're
about it.
working
but
on that.
Yeah.
The
the problem
DPW
is
is
the
working on
handicap
that, yeah.
accessibility isn't there, and
No, but the DPW they're trying to get
Yeah,
grants for it
we-
or something, we voted on that.
Yes,
yes.
yeah, we put money into,
Yeah.
into looking in detail, but not the construction aspect of it, but the
Right,
design
just
aspect of it.
the-
Okay, that's good.
So I think for the overarching goal for this
Yep.
category, how do you feel about establish a list of ongoing projects and get updates on progress on a regular basis, or something like that?
That's good.
Because people do often say, hey, you know, we
Yeah.
put money, we voted for money at town meeting, and what's happening with that, so.
Okay, no, that bridge is a perfect, the aqueduct bridge, we could use an update, that's a perfect example of that, like,
Yes, yes.
did Scott get this? Spend this money on this person or this group that was
Yep.
going to advise, and what's the outcome of it? I don't know that we've had an update on that,
I don't think we have.
yeah.
Okay, and then lastly, I don't know if it falls into that for me, is, on, West Main Street, I'm gonna say 329 to 345, that area of road,
Tell me what's there, I don't remember the numbers.
Tredebi,
Okay.
is no longer there anymore. But that area is allowed a certain amount of hazardous waste material,
Mm-hmm,
to remove that.
okay.
Because at the time, they were granted like a 10,000 gallon thing from the fire department. But the town said, we don't want it, there's wells up there. I mean, some of this grandfathering that seems to be used for allowing things to go by isn't necessarily valid. And I think that would really that's important for us to start looking at, really and then again, there's a waterway right down there, what is that, Hop Brook? Does Hop Brook go right by?
I think so.
So, and there's like a culvert that's going underground from that area,
And
that goes right
groundwater.
into the brook. So I think that we really have to start looking at non-conforming and, you know, going into anything that's into the waterways, because we continue to let them expand into it instead of saying, okay, we need to look at.
This is an area that, working with the planning board, makes a lot of sense.
And the DPW,
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, certainly regulation-wise, a lot of these things fall under the planning board, but some fall under us.
Yes, in ZBA.
Yeah.
There is some overlap, and we've been talking for a long time, I know, since I started on the board, Julianne and I have been talking about, wouldn't it be nice to have a meeting with the planning board on whatever the overlap
Right,
is,
and just in
work
general,
together and
yeah, work
make-
together.
Yeah.
So, so I think that's great, cause that's the collaboration and the communication that I think
Yeah.
will work with everybody.
I had another building idea that, and I don't know if it's a building, but like a teen drop-in center, something that I've heard popped up. I don't know if you've driven through downtown on a half day. There's always lots of kids milling around, so having a
Yeah.
space that they can go to. I mean, just a thought.
Yeah,
Yes, that's been brought up a lot.
Yeah.
some sort of a community center.
Yeah,
Right.
and the library's done a
Downtown.
great job
Yeah.
on their programs, but I don't think they want all the middle schoolers there.
Well, I don't think, yeah, not all kids wanna go to the library.
That's right. And we do have town hall down there, you asked for town hall, so. Town hall is already.
Old Town
listed.
Hall, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so did you write down a joint meeting with the planning board? I'll put that there.
And Laura, you brought up a topic which is very interesting, sustainability.
That was
Kristen, I
actually-
think that's on your
That was
list.
Kristen's.
Yeah.
I just put it in there so we didn't miss it.
Oh,
But I put sustainability of all decisions, just meaning that when we're making decisions, we'll consider the sustainability of them. Did I
And that's
understand
actually
that?
something that we could talk about with the planning board, cause that very much affects them.
can we have that as a short category? Because I'd like to add things like electric car chargers to that. That's something we could get done, I think.
So that actually plays into economic development as well, the car chargers. So I remember last year or whatever, someone said, can we not worry about getting electric car chargers for the handful of people in town who have electric cars? It's not for the people who live in town. People who live in town have their own electric charging set up somehow. That's how you can have an electric car. I have one in my garage. Other people have another system they use. They go down to the Bank of America in Marlboro or whatever. But that's just it. They put them in places where there are shops and restaurants because you need something to do while you're waiting for your car to charge. So if we had one in downtown and then we had a cute restaurant, or, I mean, we do have C'est La Vie, but if we had another cute restaurant, or, well, we have a few cute restaurants downtown, right? But if we had enough options for people, if we had a few shops as well, a lot of times it's about 40 minutes. I don't mind getting out of my car for 40 minutes and walking around a cute downtown and getting to see a new town. It's really for people who are passing through, who need a place to charge quick, and wouldn't they like to try out that cute restaurant while they're there? So it's a really good economic development idea.
I think 4 West Main Street is a great place to put.
Yes,
Right,
well,
right in the middle
you
of
don't
everything.
want one though. I think
Well,
it's a
yeah.
good idea to have a whole.
Yeah, library should have a couple for West
Yeah.
Main.
And a
Once
lot
we
of-
figure out what the use is of for West
Well,
Main, it's
and
part of
keep
it.
in mind too, these chargers, like, a lot of times, like at libraries, they will have one, but it'll be a slow charger. There's slow chargers and fast ones. And the fast one is the one the person passing through town is looking for, cause they need to be able to charge their car within an hour or so and then keep going. If you put a slow one in at some restaurants, some brew pubs and stuff will have a slow charger, and they get people, and a lot of times those are free, cause they don't use that much electricity, it's actually quite cheap to run them, so they get the business of the person who wants to go to the brew pub and they plug in for the time that they're there, and, I'm sure there are grants for this kind of
Yes.
thing too. But you have to keep in mind, like, do we want some slow, some fast? Yeah, sure, definitely, but not just all slow.
Okay. Thinking.
I live this.
Yeah? I'm the experienced electric car person. I've got a plug-in hybrid, so I do some of it, but
Yeah.
I don't need it.
Right, you have
Yeah.
your gas
I've
tank too.
got the dead dinosaurs to run on if I need to.
So, Laura, did you say that you, repeat what you said, something about all new building projects? I mean, we do have the stretch code, but, for example, we gave money for the new roof at Proctor.
Yeah.
And that supposedly is going to be solar panel ready, correct?
I don't know, that was one of my questions, is solar panels on roofs, but I'm not sure which building you're talking about, or what that comment, I don't know what I said.
So I thought you referred to something like, all new building projects, we should do whatever we can to make sure they're as green as possible.
Oh, that was
And-
Kristen.
And also,
Yeah.
you know, we should get an update on the green community status that we have, because doesn't that
I
qualify
think
as?
that's just a thing, something we achieved a few years ago when we were designated as a green community.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what bar they had to jump over to get there, but I don't think it's anything that changes that you get updates on. But I do think that we could get updates, like I know when they were putting in, or maybe it was right after they had put in the Amazon warehouse on Bartlett Street, they had talked about, well, why didn't we talk about having, the parking lot be, for the employees have, there's some sort of,
Solar panels,
Solar-
I think the
solar
National
panels
Grid
on the-
has them.
yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
those-
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got a roof, but.
Yeah,
but
like a
solar
roof to
panel.
the parking
Yeah, I
lot,
think
yeah.
that's even at 4 West.
And honestly, like on the top of the warehouse, could there be some kind of garden or grass or whatever? There's a lot of things that could have been done that weren't done, and you know, they've already passed all their planning board requirements. They're not looking for new permits, so I don't know that we can do it.
But that's
No,
where
but-
a meeting with planning board would be beneficial.
Yeah,
to-
and because maybe there are new building projects
Right.
that.
And I think we've talked about this a lot over the years, is if you take a tree down, put a tree up,
Oh,
so that we have
absolutely.
more like tree replacement.
We're supposed to
plans.
have that, it's in the, it was in the bylaws, that
Yes,
every tree you
the
took
select
down.
board is responsible for shade trees.
And if you took one down, you were supposed to put one back. It
Where do
says-
they need one?
I don't know, but I.
Just on the public ways.
Yeah, you know, I
public-
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and like they took several down at the Ellsworth Park, because I saw the stumps cut to the ground. So that, looks like it used to be lined on the, you're coming in, from the beginning. And now there's just, the trees are on the other side of the, building.
I think
That-
that
that building that's
DPW
there?
has a pretty low threshold for what's diseased, because to them it's safer to cut down a tree rather than have it drop a branch on a kid. So-
Well, and, you know, yes and no to some of that, but just to that point,
Yeah.
the new ones that they planted along Route 135 are dying.
Yeah.
So there has to be
So those will probably.
a year's
Warranty.
warranty on them.
Warranty on the trees,
And that needs to be addressed. That can't be left for next year and
And
we haven't
also,
looked
when
at
we
it.
were talking about this, when we were talking about the cemetery, I don't know whether it was before the election or not, but I remember somebody saying, if someone wanted to, I guess this is sort of an economic development thing, like if someone wanted to go to Bigelow and say, would you like to donate a couple of trees to the town, and we'll give you a little, you know, marker saying these trees were donated by, and, you know, it's kind of like advertising, but it's also a free tree for us.
So this brings up the question of whether or not we should have a sustainability committee, because we have some super smart people in this town who are dedicated to this topic.
We do.
Westboro has a very robust, I think it's Westboro Sustainable or something like that, but they are doing fantastic things.
Yes.
And I think that should be something
Our
we
people
talk
work
about.
with them a lot, I
What?
know. The Northborough sustainability people work with the Sustainable Westboro people a lot, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think,
And,
it's worth
and
discussing.
as the Westboro representatives will always say, you know, saving the earth and helping with climate change is not just a town.
Right.
We should all be working.
No, and that's definitely, not a individual town-based thing, it's a community effort,
Should be worldwide.
it should be, yeah, a universal collaboration, yes.
A couple of other random things. I think we as a board should review all board policies I don't even think we know what they are or where they are.
This is,
So they've policies that have been set over the last couple of decades. Yeah, most of them are in the same section as the bylaws and town code and other things like that on the website. But we should
Review
just
board
comprehensive
policies.
review board policies.
Sorry.
Yeah. And that should just be every, normal course of action. Every few years, all the policies should get a quick review.
Maybe along
Yeah.
that, like a code of conduct.
That was also
Oh,
on my list.
sorry.
That was, wait, that wasn't my other one, but where was, I had that on here.
Way to steal
I had an arrow next, it was under all the financial stuff, so yes, committee member code of conduct. So Maya, who is our insurance company for the town, has a recommended code of conduct for boards and committees.
I like that.
And some towns adopt it verbatim, some will, customize it. I think it is a good idea for us to review that, and then at least all boards and committees under us,
Right.
would have to, abide by that code of conduct. And
Which
it's the kind of thing that makes sense. You read it and like, yeah, of course, everybody's gonna do that, but it's good to get it in writing.
It
No,
is
I
good
agree
to
with
have
that.
it
I
in
think you
writing,
should do that.
Yeah.
With that training program and stuff like that, new people coming on as
Yeah.
well. I mean, I think it's something that should be, not just that we oversee, I mean, there should be some way we can
Yeah.
get it town, all the boards and
Yeah.
committees.
Yeah, I mean, there are some we don't have authority over, the planning board and the school committees primarily. They would have to, we would ask them to adopt it themselves.
Yes, okay, that's.
And again, the school committee is kind of off in its own little world. They have comprehensive policies that it might not make any sense for them to review the Maya policy, but the planning board probably does.
But the moderator appoints.
Mm-hmm.
The moderator should also be part of
Yeah,
that and agree
yeah.
to that.
Agreed. And then the other one that I had is, take a look at our appointment process. A few years ago, before, I think Julianne, you were the only member, the board updated its policies on how to do the interviews and appointments. I think, taking another look at that process and the interview process would make some sense.
So on part of that note, I had review and revise current committee/commission structure, consider consolidation or elimination of existing committees or commissions that are no longer used, and take those off the ranks. And of course, there's recruit new committee and commission volunteers that have reflected all segment of Northborough citizenry, ensure that all volunteers are acknowledged for their willingness to serve.
So this is just miscellaneous?
I really don't have, I think we're just trying to get everything out, so is there another category you wanted to put in?
No, this would definitely be miscellaneous. I would,
Maybe in the board organization?
We can assign categories later. I want to make sure that before we leave tonight, all of our ideas are reflected somewhere.
Oh, well, and I have to say, when we go back to the fact of the buildings and such, so that we had put money aside for the roof at Proctor. We have put an order aside for the police station to be painted.
Mhm.
There's a time frame of when the expectation of that was going to happen, and now it's going away into, we don't know.
Yeah, I think
And-
that falls into getting updates on
Yeah.
prior approved projects.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's important that we actually start moving on that, because again, first it was supposed to be the fall, now it's supposed to be the spring. What's a hold on?
so this is a brand new topic, kind of. I would like to learn more about ranked choice voting.
Would that fall under education? Okay, or miscellaneous?
Are
let's just-
other
let's just-
towns doing it? Is that
Other towns are, I know Cambridge does some form of it. I think Maine has adopted it as a statewide
Statewide.
thing.
on
Alaska
a municipal
also.
level? Do they do
Alaska.
it
In
on
some
a
countries,
town level?
Australia, I think, does it. But, and I'm not saying I'm for it, but I think we have to start to begin to educate ourselves on it, because I think it's especially relevant in municipal elections.
It's a neat idea.
That's-
Yeah, I think it's worth worth looking at.
I agree.
Yeah.
Under sustainability and resilience, sustainable management of energy resources, reduction of carbon emissions, and regeneration of our natural environment probably goes under one of the things we did. Green, maybe that's under the green. Do you want me to say it slowly?
Yeah, I was just gonna reduce carbon footprint.
So,
Will that cover all of those?
well, sustainable management of energy resources.
Sorry, so, say that one more?
Do you want me to
The
say it?
first part you said?
Sustainable management of energy resources.
Okay.
And then reduction of carbon emissions
Got it.
and regeneration of our natural environment. That it falls into planting trees that are cut and putting trees in now that have died and
Yep.
that sort of thing. And what we haven't talked about. The infrastructure, did we talk about infrastructure?
I think it's kind of popped up in a variety of places. Is there something in particular?
Well, we wanted sufficient and sustainable, well-maintained, which it hasn't been so well-maintained. I think that's kind of important. It's been kind of left, the infrastructure has kind of been left to,
What do you mean, the infrastructure? Like, that's a big word. That means a lot of things.
well, working under the greens and, having grass and having to manage grass and having to manage the trees and all that sort of thing. It seems like as you drive through town now, what used to always be taken care of, so you'd have the green strip by the sidewalk.
Maintenance?
Probably, yeah, town maintenance of more than just like one spot here or one spot there. There should be like should be general, on the streets that have always had, the machine that we bought that brings this blade up on the side and it cuts all that down. This year, I don't know if they've used it because there's an awful lot of growth on so many of the roads that hasn't been trimmed back. I mean, even going down Lyman Street to Westboro used to always be done. I've seen it. And now, Ridge Road wasn't done this year. A portion of Maple Street hasn't been done. There's areas that just, the grass is this high. That's several weeks.
Well, this would, I think, fall under when we talk to department heads and,
Yeah.
and kind of understand their schedule and,
And also, this summer has been particularly crazy with so much
Yeah.
heat and so much rain.
yeah.
So
True.
that might have messed up their schedule, honestly. I know my lawn was a total disaster
Right.
until yesterday.
Yeah, it just seems like there's some places that are,
So-
that are repetitively cleaned, such as Ellsworth. McAfee is beautiful.
Okay.
But other areas that are just, it's almost like everybody went on vacation down the Cape. Nobody was here to fix it.
Yeah, I think there's just been an extraordinary amount of growth. I mean, I've seen the same thing. The weeds at my house are impressive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Lisa, I put it down as townwide maintenance of roadways and sidewalks. Does that cover it?
Yeah, I think that would cover it.
And also, actually, should we just put sidewalks?
Yes.
I mean, honestly, if 95% of Northborough was sitting here right now, they would all be saying, why haven't you
Yeah.
said
Yes.
sidewalks yet?
Yeah, we've said
No.
complete streets pretty
Yeah.
early, and that's
Right.
within
no,
that to
just
some
put
extent.
on said
Agree.
complete streets, but not everybody knows
Mhm,
that that
right.
means
Yeah, I think that's
they
a
are thinking
huge-
about sidewalks, because it means other things too, and it's a grant.
Laura, under miscellaneous,
Pardon me?
under miscellaneous,
Yeah.
do we wanna understand more about how the town has, how we're addressing cybersecurity and?
Yes, that was on my list.
That's good.
Yeah, because towns are getting hacked, and then they're paying
Right. Then there's insurance for that, or
Okay.
there's,
ransom.
yeah, that's something we really should, if we haven't.
Yeah, I think that's, the town is very, very aware of those things. And I believe in this most recent year's budget, there was some
Something
additional
for that.
money for some of those things.
We need to make sure that they are funded to the,
Yeah.
you know, so much.
Yeah, I think looking at that makes a lot of sense. We have to do that in a careful way, so that we don't publicize exactly what we're doing and how.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's-
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And this is off, any of the things we've talked about so far is the historic and cultural heritage. Cause there's things in town that,
Like maintain,
historic.
Enhance.
enhance.
Yeah, well, preservation and promotion of historic and cultural heritage. Cause there's a lot of history in Northborough, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
that's not really a select board goal, that's a historical society goal. We
Well,
can,
well,
we
it's-
can support them.
Yeah, but it's just kind of an overview of the importance, I mean, we're looking at how the town looks and everything, the importance of that, because we've never had a historic district.
We do have a historic district.
Yeah.
It's right where Mitch lives, I think.
Is that
the
right? We have
historic
a
district.
area?
It is, we have a couple of historic districts. My house is not within one because my house is a reconstruction, but if you look at it, it kind of circles around my house. So First Parish Church, and then the streets, both sides of the road going up after the new houses next to mine, and across the street, those older homes going up towards the cemetery, sort of historic district, and then going just a little bit further up, I don't wanna say the last name of the people, but we know somebody that lives there, their house is a district also, separate
How
from
the
that.
house itself is.
Yeah, there are a number of homes that are in.
Yeah, a number of homes
Yeah.
as individuals.
And the expectation is White Cliffs would be in a historic district once that process moves along with
Right.
whatever we choose to do there.
Right, cause I know when I lived in Westboro, I lived on Church Street,
Mhm.
and we all had our little
Yeah.
house built and such, and
Yeah.
proudly put that on your building.
Mhm.
And it'd be nice to have, a certain section of downtown going to
It'd be
that
nice to have
point.
it posted.
Yeah.
There are some signs. Meeting House Historic District, there's a sign right near my house, because that's the name of
Ah, the
that.
district that
It's
was
the
in.
original town meeting house, the original town hall, original high school, right across the street from my house.
Wow, okay.
Long time before me.
Alright.
I know, just the other one that I wanted to add that doesn't really have a category is just awareness around the housing prices in the entire state. Can I put that one in here? Just, there's no
yeah.
easy solution, but just to
Yeah.
be aware of, or is that not a goal?
Yeah, no, housing affordability.
I think the housing affordability, especially for young people moving back and seniors that wanna downsize.
Yeah,
So-
both
Okay.
of those are huge categories that,
That was the last one on my list.
yeah,
so.
that's a big one. I have one more when you're done with
Okay.
that. Since ranked choice voting was brought up, I have a companion item to that, which is allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in municipal elections.
I have an idea.
The state is not allowing any towns to do that yet. A number of towns have passed local bylaws allowing it, including Southborough passed one for 17-year-olds just this past year. But the legislature thus far has not approved any town's request to do that. If we, as a town, want to do that,
Yeah.
we can still get that on the books, and that would be added weight to the legislature to allowing it. I think it's a pretty neat idea, to allow, said 16 and 17-year-olds to vote only in municipal elections. It wouldn't impact statewide elections.
So actually, I have one more to piggyback on that.
Okay.
So remember last year I went to,
Peasley?
Peasley and spoke
The candy
to
vote?
Mrs. Jonay's class. It was so fun, but also, and I'm a kid person, so I don't know, I feel like Laura's also a kid person, but I feel like we all could do this in different places. Drum up support, get people into town meeting.
Yep.
If you do it right before town meeting, and if we're considering, putting that on a town ballot, so if the state does change its mind, we can have high school kids voting. We need to get into the high school and
Yeah.
tell them what we do and why it's important for them to pay attention.
Yeah.
Which they don't like to do because they're high school kids and they want to pay attention to other things. But it could be really interesting. I did go to the high school actually last year and I spoke to the DECA kids. And I said, isn't this a business group? And they were like, leaders of any kind. So
they had some great questions for me, and that was just that group of kids, but still, I do think there is a place for us in all the schools
Yep.
in town, and between the 5 of us, we could drum up interest in things and volunteers and
that's-
support at town meeting.
That's the next thing, because we did have our last volunteer sign-up night day.
Yeah.
A young lady that was high school,
Mhm.
who was interested in signing up, and fabulous. And I'd like to get more of that, even if it was an alternate or somebody who was there to at least learn some of the civic part of it, or so what, and you were talking to her about age limitations.
Yeah, so state law and town bylaws don't have age limitations on most boards and committees.
Okay.
So, cultural council is one that a lot of communities appoint 16 and 17-year-olds. I mean, in theory, I've seen one 14-year-old serve on
Okay.
a cultural council, and it's totally legal, totally fine. The state encourages that. Some boards and committees, it might make less sense. You know, I don't know if I'd support that on appropriations, for example. But there are others that 16 and 17-year-olds can and should apply for. I think that's fine. Something that we may want to consider at some point is asking a student to be a sort of a student member of the select board. I have seen that done on school committees. I've never seen that done on select boards, but there's no reason it can't be done. And that would be a non-voting member who would, you know, participate and attend all the meetings. And I thought about this because there's a high school student that's very bright and very interested in local government that I've spoken to a couple of times that I have in mind. But
I
it
think
could be anybody,
I think it's a
Yeah.
great idea, it's a great opportunity for them.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a group of high school students 5 years ago now, maybe, before, that were very interested in the vote and very interested in getting people out, and they had their
Yeah.
own little Facebook
Yeah.
page, and they did all of that, and that helps with that age group.
It
that
helps
we're
to get
bringing in.
people to town meeting, and
That's
a lot
right.
of the seniors are 18, so they
Right.
can vote.
Yeah.
So can you write that down, like reach out to community?
Oh, yes.
Reach out to the community via the schools? Is that, I mean, those are the places where there's the most people with the most things on the line, because you're voting on the whole school committee budget and everything. And a lot of them are just busy, harried parents, and they don't come. I know, because I used to be one of them. How far I have come.
Look at us now.
I know, right?
So, in my old town, we did for a very long time like a town government week, conjunction with the school. It was a really big initiative.
Yeah,
I didn't create it. I grew into it when I joined the select board there. Was an active participant, and it was a week where the high school government classes focused, but the whole school was involved to some extent, and members of department heads and boards and committee members would go in and speak to different classes focused on that week. They would invite in state rep and state senator to speak, and it culminated on Friday of a town government fair. It was like a trade show with boards and committees and departments represented in the gym, and each class would go through, and you'd come up with some way to engage them, like a quiz or a fair or something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
think
It's such
great
a nice
idea.
idea. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of
But
work,
I
and
mean-
that's my hesitation on it.
But there are other things we can do.
Yeah.
There's, like, we could each try and find a teacher who would let us come into their class
Yeah.
to talk about, because they all teach, a lot of them teach some kind of government. Like, Mrs. Donay just piggybacked on, well, we're doing government, and, my kids had her for 5th grade, so she just got in touch with me and said, we're doing, a very brief unit on local government after we just did our federal and state government, but would you come in? And the kids, they knew so much already. They knew so much already, so.
So,
Put it on the list.
so I'm thinking of one other thing too, that I don't know what category it would go in. But I have actually now, I was lucky enough, Julian was with me, to tour the fire station that they live in now and meet the men who work there, and lady. And it was nice to be able to say, you know, I recognize you, you recognize me, we all work together here. I got a tour of the police station, and that was very beneficial.
Yeah.
And I think they realized too that now we're interested in what you need. And how we can facilitate maybe some of that, not, you know, not have this, what do you call it, silos. You know, this is that silo, and this silo, and that silo. I asked why we have the police that used to come before us, that we were introduced to, that would come on. Remember we talked about that?
When we appoint,
Yeah, I guess we appoint police officers, but we don't appoint fire.
Do the official, like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thing
welcome,
at
or
the
whatever you might call that. But I think we should do the same thing with the firemen, don't you? I mean, I know they're already, they're in-house and they do everything there, but it was nice to be able to recognize their coming on board and
I see
becoming a
what you're
part of the community and,
That would fall more
Have-
into the category of meeting new employees.
Yeah, like inviting them to a
Okay.
meeting,
Yeah.
just so we can say hello. But yeah, I do enjoy, having the new police officers come in, and then when I see them on the road, when I'm driving by them, I'm always thinking like, I don't know if I've met you, but I'm gonna wave, because you all look really young, and you all have the same outfit on, I don't know who's who. But yeah.
again, I think that sense of team, that sense of community, I think is what we
No,
have
it's nice.
to look
I
forward
love
to.
that.
And,
I do love that.
and I think they enjoyed it too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's much nicer to say, oh, I recognize you. Recognize some of the, you know, people that are working here.
Yeah, and I had, funnily enough, a smoke alarm situation at my house where they just went off and there was no fire. I checked and they just wouldn't go off. They wouldn't turn off. They just went off for no reason and then they wouldn't go. And they're all wired together. So so I called the fire department and I got Lorraine on the phone, the chief's like
Dispatcher, so-
admin assistant. No, she's not
Oh, no.
dispatch. She kind of runs the fire station. She's like, and I was like, what do I do? And she's like, I'll have some guys come over. I was like, I hope they're not busy because my house is not on fire. Anyway, the guys who came over, I was like, I know you. And they're like, we know you. And I'm like, I'm really sorry to bother you. But anyway, I needed all new fire alarms.
Yeah, because
I-
after
I-
10
I
years.
I went through an extremely similar
Yes,
situation.
it's very embarrassing
Yes.
when you don't know why, and then
Yeah.
that's why.
Yeah.
You just.
Yeah, mine were yelling carbon monoxide.
Oh God, also
Yeah,
scary.
and there was no carbon monoxide. I checked and they verified, but like, all right, let's just order all new smoke detectors.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
but they were great. Anyway,
They are.
it's 10:01.
Time.
Does anyone else
Pumpkin
have
pie.
anything that we want to put on the board now? Again, we're not finalizing anything tonight.
Right.
So we have the opportunity to add later. We will absolutely be organizing this a lot.
And fine tuning
Yeah.
and refining.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a great start.
this is a great
So
start.
what I'm happy
rough
to do
draft.
is, Julianne, or whoever, I'm happy to take pictures of these and transcribe them and then share them. And then if somebody wants to categorize them,
Mhm.
especially the miscellaneous ones that have been put up, and then, does that work?
Sure.
Does that work?
yes, and when you transcribe it, send it to me so I can
Organize
make
it?
sure my minutes are.
Yeah, Julianne has volunteered to take minutes
Okay.
for this, so.
So I
yeah.
will share with you the lists that we've come up with, and then I'll just defer to you on any reorganization of categories. And if I made mistakes somewhere things went, that's entirely possible too. Especially with our rapid fire round.
Yes,
I think it was a great start.
Yep.
It's
Good.
Yeah.
I really appreciate everybody.
That was from Gib. We dropped those off when we were in recess. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 We adjourn, 10:03
Thank you.
PM. Thanks very much, everybody. Good night, everyone.
She said inflation contributed to some of those higher costs. She quickly admits, though, that she and her daughter personalized